On May 16, 2067, the demons launched their final assault against humanity's last stronghold. The world had already been reduced to ruins, and at last, humanity had completely fallen. Amid the destruction, a massive stone pillar stood broken in the center of the battlefield. Blood dripped down its cracked surface as the surrounding city burned beneath the crimson sky. From within the rubble, a young man slowly lifted his head. His body was covered in wounds, and blood ran down his face, but his glowing golden eyes still burned with determination. His name was Si Chen, an SS-rank lightning assassin. 7 years earlier, several demon kings had suddenly descended upon the world. They led endless demon armies that swept across humanity with overwhelming force. Entire nations collapsed under their oppressive power, and countless humans were slaughtered without mercy. Among the demon kings, one figure stood above the rest: Demon King Lan Yue. Surrounded by flames and destruction, the terrifying ruler looked down on humanity with contempt. He mocked mankind's final hope, declaring that the entire human race was nothing more than worthless trash. Now, standing before the dying battlefield, the Demon King coldly declared that he would drain every final drop of his remaining life. Dark crimson energy burst from Demon King Lan Yue's claw, like a living vortex. Lan Yue coldly declared that Si Chen would become his food and transform into his strength. Streams of red energy shot out in every direction, wrapping around Si Chen's battered body like chains. The violent power surged endlessly, threatening to consume everything around him. But suddenly, Si Chen's eyes widened. A single thought echoed through his mind. No. Images of the people he cherished flashed before him one after another. His little sister, his comrades, his master. Every precious person he had cared about had already been taken away by the demons. Blood ran down the corner of his mouth as lightning slowly began crackling around his body. If it was for the sake of the people he had lost, he refused to fall there. Golden lightning suddenly exploded from Si Chen's body. Si Chen glared directly at Demon King Lan Yue and declared that if humanity was destined to fall, then he would drag the Demon King down with him. At that moment, he activated his SS-rank ultimate skill, Terminus Light. A massive sphere of radiant energy formed behind him like a miniature sun. Even Demon King Lan Yue was stunned. For the first time, fear appeared in his crimson eyes as he realized something was wrong. He tried to move, but his body would not respond. The lightning surrounding Si Chen had completely locked him in place. Bathed in endless light, Si Chen's expression became calm and emotionless. Lightning crawled across his face and body as memories slowly surfaced within his mind. Fragments of his past flashed before his eyes like shattered glass. He remembered his little sister, injured and trembling in the rain. Then another memory appeared, his master standing before him. Another memory flashed of his family's peaceful life long before the world fell apart. As the endless light swallowed everything around him, Si Chen quietly thought that perhaps he would finally see them again soon. But deep inside, regret still remained. He blamed himself for not being strong enough to protect the people he loved. Bathed in blinding lightning, Si Chen stared silently into the collapsing battlefield. If only he had been a little stronger, maybe things could have ended differently. Even as the overwhelming power of Terminus Light consumed the battlefield, Demon King Lan Yue still roared arrogantly, declaring that humans were nothing more than an inferior race. Yet his voice was gradually drowned out by the endless sea of light. At that moment, a single desperate wish filled Si Chen's heart. If only he could return to the past before that monster dungeon had ever been discovered. If only he could stop the very first Demon King from ever appearing in the human world. As that final thought echoed through his mind, the blinding light of Terminus Light expanded endlessly, swallowing the entire battlefield in pure white radiance. Everything around Si Chen began breaking apart beneath the overwhelming power. In that final moment, a painful thought echoed in his heart. If only he had been able to go back earlier, then maybe he would not have lost everything so quickly. But the next second, darkness suddenly consumed the endless light. Then faint rays of sunlight slowly appeared. Si Chen's eyes snapped open. His breathing was uneven as he stared blankly upward at the familiar ceiling above him. Warm sunlight poured quietly into the room, illuminating the small apartment. Confusion filled his expression as he slowly turned his head. He was lying on a bed. He sat up abruptly, staring around the room in disbelief. His golden eyes trembled slightly as an impossible realization appeared in his mind. He was alive. Si Chen slowly looked around the quiet room. Still unable to understand what was happening, he wondered where he was. He slowly walked toward the window and looked outside. The moment he saw the scene below, his eyes widened in shock. The campus medical hospital stood peacefully under the bright sky while students casually walked around, laughing and talking like normal people. Sai Chen froze. The world was supposed to be destroyed. Humanity should have already fallen to the demons. Sweat slowly rolled down his face as he stared outside in disbelief. He could not understand where all these people had suddenly come from. It took him a long time to finally accept the truth. Somehow he had returned to the past, not just a few days or months earlier, but all the way back to his university days 10 years ago. As Si Chen stood there in shock, strange sounds suddenly echoed in his ears. A mysterious system-like voice appeared before him, and a glowing message floated in the air. The system announced that the fusion of the power of gluttony had been completed. Si Chen stared at the screen in disbelief. His breathing became heavier as countless memories rushed through his mind. He finally realized that he had truly gone back 10 years into the past. The date was May 16, 2157. His eyes trembled as he remembered something terrifying. This was exactly 3 years before the first Demon King appeared. 3 years later, in the year 2060, the first Demon King, Wrath, would descend upon the world. That monster would open the gates of hell and drag humanity into endless despair. Because of Wrath's appearance, more Demon Kings would soon follow one after another, turning the human world into a battlefield filled with death and destruction. The appearance of Wrath marked the true beginning of the end. From that moment onward, the world slowly fell into ruin, and Si Chen lost everything precious to him because of it. But now, everything was different. He had returned to the past. As Si Chen looked at his hands, determination filled his eyes. He realized that this was his only chance to change fate. If he could defeat the first Demon King, Wrath, before it fully appeared, then he could stop the gates of hell from opening. If that happened, the endless disasters and the arrival of the other Demon Kings could all be prevented. At that moment, the glowing system screen was still floating in front of him. It continuously displayed the message that the power of gluttony fusion had been completed. Sai Chen frowned in confusion. Ever since he opened his eyes, that strange screen had remained in front of him, refusing to disappear. Si Chen stared at the strange screen floating in front of him. A status window appeared, showing his name and different stats like strength, speed, stamina, luck, element, and mental power. Every stat was set to 100. He was completely confused. The screen looked exactly like the status windows from video games. Si Chen wondered if those were his current abilities. In his previous life he had never seen anything like this before. Back then, he only fought using the awakened powers he had gained naturally. In this world, only 1 out of every 10,000 people could awaken special abilities. Different types of awakeners existed, such as flame mages, lightning chanters, star mages, and many others. The university Sai Chen attended was a special school that only accepted students who had the potential to awaken powers. It was known as the National University for Awakened Powers. Unfortunately, in his previous life, Si Chen never awakened any powers while attending the school. For 4 entire years, he remained at the very bottom of the hierarchy. Everyone looked down on him, and he was constantly bullied by other students. Thinking back on it, Si Chen realized that was probably why he had woken up in the hospital. Si Chen suddenly noticed a strange card-like screen appearing in front of him. The image on it showed a class called Lightning Assassin. He looked at it in confusion as electricity crackled around the figure on the card. The card displayed different abilities and skills. One skill, called Godspeed, could greatly increase movement speed with electric power. Another skill, Electroblade, allowed electricity to form into a sharp blade that could paralyze enemies. Si Chen was shocked. Lightning Assassin had been the class he used in his previous life. As he stared at the card, he began to feel a strange power flowing through his body. A thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Maybe he had inherited the powers from his past life. His eyes widened in disbelief, as he wondered if he had awakened his powers much earlier this time. Wanting to confirm everything, Sai Chen decided to test his current powers. The strange screen reacted immediately, and the words class change appeared in front of him. At that moment, the room's door handle suddenly clicked from outside. The door opened, and a young man with glasses rushed inside. His name was Ma Long, and he was a flower chanter. He immediately shouted at Si Chen. Surprised to see him awake, Ma Long quickly ran over and grabbed Si Chen's shoulders, asking if he was all right. Si Chen calmly replied that he was fine, but at the same time he realized something important. The strange Lightning Assassin screen floating beside him could not be seen by other people. Ma Long stared at him in shock. He could not believe that all of Si Chen's injuries had completely disappeared overnight. Just yesterday, Si Chen had been beaten badly, yet now he looked perfectly healthy. Ma Long complained that he himself was the awakened one, so he should have recovered faster instead. Si Chen quietly looked at Ma Long and remembered who he was. Ma Long had been his college roommate in the past. Even though Ma Long had awakened powers during school, he was still considered weak compared to the stronger students. In Si Chen's previous life, Ma Long had been brutally killed on the third day of the Demon Lord's rampage. But now, Ma Long was standing alive right in front of him again. Si Chen could hardly believe it. At the same time, Ma Long looked closely at Si Chen and nervously wondered if he had somehow become stronger overnight. At that moment, Si Chen finally felt that everything was real. He had truly returned to the past. Suddenly, Ma Long remembered something important. He quickly shouted that the ranking test was tomorrow. Excited, he grabbed Si Chen and told him they needed to hurry back and prepare for it. Ma Long reminded him that even though he still had not awakened any powers, the ranking test was extremely important for graduation. Without waiting for an answer, he dragged Si Chen out of the room while repeatedly telling him to hurry up. As they walked outside, Si Chen looked around quietly. The campus was full of life. Students were everywhere, using their awakened powers. Some practiced magic, while others trained their physical abilities or played sports with enhanced strength. Seeing all those living people again made Si Chen feel strange and emotional. In his previous life, he had watched countless people die during the Demon Lord's disaster. It had been a very long time since he last saw such a peaceful and lively scene. Ma Long looked at him in confusion after hearing his strange words, unable to understand what he was talking about. Ma Long nervously suggested that they should just walk around the track instead of doing anything difficult. But Si Chen quietly looked ahead while thinking to himself. He had already lost everything once before. If he did nothing now, the same hopeless future would happen all over again. His eyes turned serious as he realized he needed to act quickly. He had to become stronger and rank up as soon as possible. In this era, awakened people could only grow stronger by hunting monsters near dungeons. Killing monsters was the only way to level up and gain power. However, almost every dungeon was controlled by powerful guilds. People without a guild had almost no chance of getting stronger or ranking up on their own. Si Chen looked at his current stats and wondered how they compared to the strength of other awakened people and monsters. To separate different power levels, the government had created a ranking system for both awakened humans and monsters. The ranks were divided from strongest to weakest. SES, A, B, C, D, and E. Most students stayed at E rank during their entire time in school. Only a few talented students, or those with strong guild connections, managed to rise to D rank. As Si Chen stared at his status screen, he tried to estimate his own rank based on the experience from his previous life, but he still wondered what grade people would give him if he were officially evaluated. Si Chen looked at Ma Long and quietly thought that his own rank would definitely be higher than his. Before Ma Long could understand what he meant, a ball suddenly flew toward him at incredible speed and smashed directly into his face. The impact sent him crashing to the ground in pain. It was a group of troublemakers sitting on the stairs that threw that ball. One of them greeted Si Chen and Ma Long with a mocking smile and commented that they had recovered pretty quickly. Ma Long's face immediately turned pale. He cursed under his breath and said that their luck was terrible because they had run into those guys again. The group looked at Si Chen and Ma Long with mocking smiles. One of them laughed and said that he had already told everyone those two could survive a beating. The bald man leaned back confidently and reminded them that this was the basketball court where he played. Then he arrogantly asked why they had not brought 2 cases of drinks for him. Ma Long froze in fear and quickly apologized. He bowed his head and nervously said that he would go buy the drinks right away. But Si Chen calmly stepped forward and stopped him. He told Ma Long that none of this was his fault. Then he coldly stared at the group and said that the ones who should be apologizing were them. Si Chen narrowed his eyes as he looked at the bald man. The moment he saw him, some of his old memories slowly returned. He immediately recognized him as the same bully from before. A few days ago, inside the locker room, the bald man continued his cruel actions. He grabbed Si Chen and repeatedly forced his head into a sink full of water. Si Chen struggled desperately, choking and gasping for air while the others stood around laughing. Seeing this, Ma Long became terrified. He begged them to stop and told them they had gone too far. The bald man only smiled. He asked why he should stop. According to him, he was simply helping Si Chen. He grabbed Si Chen's head again and pushed it into the water. He laughed and said that Si Chen still had not awakened his powers yet. Since that was the case, he might as well give him a little push to help him awaken. The bullies burst into laughter as they watched Si Chen struggle. After a while, one of them noticed that Si Chen had already passed out. Seeing that there was no more fun left, they decided to leave. One of them complained that the whole thing had become boring. As they walked away, Ma Long rushed over in panic. He knelt beside Si Chen and shook him, asking if he was okay. Water dripped from Si Chen's face as he slowly raised his head. A cold look appeared in his eyes, and he asked why they would never leave them alone. At that moment, Si Chen realized that pure evil did not only exist in the demon realm, it existed in the human world as well. Hearing Si Chen's voice, the bald bully suddenly paused and turned around. He thought he had heard Si Chen say something. Then he smirked and called out to his friends, telling them to keep playing with him. Now, in the present, Si Chen calmly told Ma Long that none of what had happened was his fault. He said the people who should be apologizing were the bullies. The bald man stopped and looked back in confusion. Ma Long was even more shocked. Sweat covered his face as he stared at Si Chen, asking what he was talking about. At that moment, the three bullies began activating their powers. Green energy wrapped around the bald leader's arms, while the others released their own auras as they stepped forward. Si Chen's red eyes narrowed as memories from his past life continued to return. The bald man's name was Gong Cheng. He was known for bullying weaker students. The only reason he could act so arrogantly was because his older brother was the strongest student in the school and also the student council president. In truth, Gong Cheng and his followers were not very powerful at all. Their strength was actually quite average. The students around them began whispering among themselves. They laughed and pointed at the scene, saying that Gong Cheng was about to beat them up again. Some mocked them, saying they had only just recovered from their last beating and hospital visit. Others sneered that one of them was the weakest awakened student in the school, while the other had not even awakened any powers yet. To the crowd, they were simply the two most useless students in the entire academy. Gong Cheng stepped forward, his green energy-covered arm crackling as he looked down at Si Chen and asked what he had said. Si Chen stared at him with cold red eyes and calmly said that from now on, they should leave him and his friend alone. For a moment, Gong Cheng froze in surprise. The next second, a cruel smile appeared on his face. He declared that it seemed Si Chen still had not learned his lesson. According to him, Si Chen needed to be taught another one. Without hesitation, Gong Cheng swung his fist towards Si Chen, intending to beat him down once again in front of everyone. As Gong Cheng's fist rushed forward, Si Chen calmly raised his hand and blocked the punch with ease. Their fists collided with a heavy impact, but instead of being pushed back, Si Chen stood firmly in place, while Gong Cheng suddenly cried out in pain. He stumbled backward, clutching his arm as it trembled. The students watching were completely stunned. They stared with wide eyes, unable to believe what they had just seen. They wondered what had happened. Some of them shouted in shock, asking if Si Chen had really blocked Gong Cheng's punch. Others could not understand how it was possible, since Si Chen had not even awakened his powers yet. They questioned whether their eyes were playing tricks on them. Gong Cheng gritted his teeth and glared at Si Chen. He angrily shouted that a weakling who had not even awakened dared to challenge him, but Si Chen's expression did not change. He looked at Gong Cheng coldly and said it was perfect. Then he calmly declared that he would try something new on him. At that moment, lightning began to crackle around his hand. A screen-like message appeared before him, showing that his class change was loading. As soon as the class change was completed, lightning burst around Si Chen's body. A status panel appeared before him. He had successfully become a lightning assassin. His attributes increased dramatically. His strength reached 200, while his speed soared to 300. Stamina, luck, element, and mental power all stood at 100. The moment the transformation finished, electric arcs crackled around his fingers. Ma Long's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Stammering in shock, he asked when Si Chen had awakened. Si Chen glanced at Gong Cheng and signaled for him to come. Seeing that, Gong Cheng grew furious. He activated his skill, Immortal Demon Armor, as his body began to change. Dark, spiked armor rapidly covered his arms. With a furious roar, Gong Cheng shouted that Si Chen had forgotten the taste of his killer punch. His massive armored fist shot forward like a cannon. But before the attack could land, Si Chen disappeared in a flash of lightning. His speed was so fast that Gong Cheng could barely follow him with his eyes. A streak of yellow lightning flashed across the battlefield as Si Chen rushed straight toward him. Si Chen moved like a bolt of lightning. Before anyone could react, his fist slammed directly into Gong Cheng's face. A loud explosion echoed across the field as blood sprayed through the air. The powerful impact sent Gong Cheng flying backward. His massive body rolled across the ground several times before finally crashing to a stop. Everyone froze in shock. The spectators stared with wide eyes, unable to believe what they had just seen. They shouted in disbelief, wondering what had happened. No one could understand how Si Chen had managed to send Gong Cheng flying with a single punch. Ma Long was equally stunned. His mouth hung open as he stared at the scene before him. In the center of the field, Si Chen stood calmly with yellow lightning crackling around his body. The students looked at him as if they were seeing a completely different person. Some wondered if that was really Si Chen. Others questioned what was happening. Meanwhile, Gong Cheng slowly pushed himself off the ground. Blood dripped from his mouth as he glared at Si Chen. Breathing heavily, he cursed under his breath and said that Si Chen had caught him off guard. Then he turned toward his companions and angrily shouted, asking why they were just standing there and watching. The white-haired boy nearby was completely shaken. Sweat covered his face as he tried to speak, but the shocking scene had left him speechless. He could only stammer in disbelief while staring at the lightning-covered Si Chen. A terrifying aura surrounded Si Chen as yellow lightning crackled around his body. His glowing eyes made him look like a completely different person. Gong Cheng's face twisted with rage. Ignoring his injuries, he charged forward and roared that he would kill Si Chen. His massive claw-like arm swung down with tremendous force. But before the attack could land, Si Chen moved. In an instant, he grabbed Gong Cheng's arm and stopped it completely. The overwhelming strength shocked Gong Cheng. Before he could react, Si Chen struck. A loud crack echoed through the air as Gong Cheng let out a painful scream. His arm bent unnaturally from the impact. Si Chen calmly looked at him and coldly stated that he was far too weak. The next moment, lightning exploded around Si Chen's fist. He launched himself forward at incredible speed and unleashed a barrage of lightning-powered punches. Each strike landed with explosive force. Blood sprayed into the air as Gong Cheng was battered relentlessly. Si Chen's final lightning-powered strike exploded with incredible force. Gong Cheng's body was launched through the air before crashing heavily into the stadium wall. The impact created cracks across the concrete, and he slid down, covered in blood and barely conscious. He coughed painfully as blood dripped from his mouth. For a moment, the entire arena fell silent. Everyone stared at the scene in disbelief. Some students immediately turned and ran, completely terrified by what they had just witnessed. Meanwhile, Ma Long remained frozen in place. His entire body trembled as he looked at Si Chen. He could barely form a sentence. He stuttered, wondering when Si Chen had become so powerful. Looking up at Si Chen, the shocked spectators could not stop asking themselves the same question. When had Si Chen become this strong? After defeating Gong Cheng, Si Chen quietly began analyzing his situation. As of now, he had come up with a few rough conclusions. First, he confirmed that he could still switch to the Lightning Assassin class whenever he wanted, just like in his previous life. Second, even though the system showed that he was only level 1, his strength was far beyond that of an ordinary beginner. Judging from the battle, he was still powerful enough to easily deal with the weakest awakened individuals. That explained why he was currently stronger than an E-rank awakened. However, one thing remained unclear. Si Chen still had no idea what his true rank actually was. As he thought about it, another problem came to mind. He had clearly knocked Gong Cheng unconscious and won the fight. Yet when he looked at his status panel, all of his attributes remained exactly the same. Not a single stat had increased. Si Chen frowned slightly. Why hadn't his stats changed at all? A new thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Looking at the defeated Gong Cheng slumped against the cracked wall, Si Chen slowly raised his hand. Lightning began crackling around his fingers as he created a thunder spear. As Si Chen raised his hand, crackling with lightning, Ma Long suddenly panicked. He hurriedly shouted for him to stop, asking what he was doing. The surrounding students were equally shocked. They stared at him in disbelief, afraid that he was about to finish off Gong Cheng. Ignoring their reactions, Si Chen pressed the lightning spear against Gong Cheng. With his glowing eyes fixed on Gong Cheng, a thought appeared in Si Chen's mind. He wondered if the methods of gaining experience in this life were the same as they had been before. As lightning surged through his hand, Si Chen grabbed Gong Cheng by the neck and released a powerful electric shock. Just as he was about to continue his experiment, a calm voice suddenly interrupted him. A woman walked forward and reminded him that this was still a school. She smiled and pointed out that although Gong Cheng had started the trouble, he had already been punished enough. This woman was Ling Yu, the vice president of the student council. With a gentle smile, Ling Yu assured Si Chen that Gong Cheng would not bother him and Ma Long again. After hearing her words, Si Chen released Gong Cheng and let him fall to the ground. He glanced at Ling Yu thoughtfully. Si Chen found it strange that the student council members were so eager to protect Gong Cheng. After all, he had never intended to kill him or seriously harm him. To Si Chen, the whole situation felt suspicious, and he began to wonder why the student council cared so much about defending Gong Cheng. Si Chen watched Gong Cheng being carried away and felt satisfied with the result. He believed that if people like Gong Cheng were not intimidated properly, they would only continue causing trouble in the future. His plan had clearly worked. Nearby, Gong Cheng's underlings peeked out from behind a wall. Their faces were pale with fear. They whispered among themselves that Si Chen had looked terrifying during the fight. They agreed that it would be best not to provoke him again. Some of them could hardly believe what they had seen. They wondered if that powerful person was really Si Chen. After all, Si Chen and Ma Long had always been known as the weakest students in the entire school. Without paying attention to the rumors, Si Chen simply told Ma Long that it was time to leave. Ma Long hurried after him without hesitation. As they walked away, Ling Yu watched their backs with a faint smile. She quietly repeated the words, "the weakest losers," to herself, clearly finding the description amusing. Later that night, inside the men's dormitory, Ma Long was still trying to explain everything to the other students. Waving his arms excitedly, he insisted that Si Chen had truly awakened. He repeatedly told them that Si Chen was not only awakened, but had become an incredibly powerful lightning assassin. Ma Long excitedly told everyone that Si Chen had pinned Gong Cheng to the ground and beaten him badly. According to Ma Long, nobody would dare look down on them anymore after seeing that fight. One of their roommates listened with a bored expression. His name was Shang Zuo, an E-rank flame mage. After hearing the story, he simply asked where Si Chen was now. Ma Long hesitated for a moment before replying that Si Chen had gone out for a run. The moment Shang Zuo heard that, he grabbed Ma Long in disbelief. He shouted that it made no sense. If Si Chen was really that powerful, why would he need to go running? Since when did awakened people need to train like that? Watching the scene from his computer desk was another roommate, Shang Yu, an E-rank flower chanter. Shaking his head, Shang Yu commented that it looked like Ma Long had taken too many hits to the head. In the background, Shang Zuo continued trying to snap Ma Long back to reality. Finally, Shang Zuo pointed out what he believed was undeniable proof. He explained that there was a reason the four of them had been assigned to the same dormitory room. According to him, all four of them had received the worst test scores in the entire grade. To Shang Zuo, that was an irrefutable fact, making Ma Long's unbelievable story even harder to accept. Shang Zuo proudly continued his speech. He declared that he had ranked 4th from the bottom in the entire grade. To him, that made him the strongest person in their dorm room. A small flame appeared in his hand as he confidently explained that everyone could only awaken one class in their lifetime. Since the other two roommates were support-type chanters, he was the only combat class awakened person in the room. As an E-rank flame mage, Shang Zuo firmly believed that this was an unchangeable fact. He then scoffed at Ma Long's story. In his eyes, there was no way a loser like Si Chen could ever awaken as a powerful lightning assassin. At the same time, Shang Zuo boasted that he could feel himself growing stronger every day. He even believed he had a chance to join one of the Academy's elite clubs in the future. Shang Yu calmly reminded everyone that the final rank evaluation before graduation would take place the next day. When that happened, the truth would become clear. Meanwhile, inside the E-rank training den, a blazing portal filled with fire and energy stood in the darkness. At that moment, a figure slowly stepped out from the burning light, surrounded by a powerful aura. This man was Gong Ting, the president of the student council. Behind him stood Ling Yu, the vice president. The group had clearly just finished a harsh training session. Gong Ting glanced around and calmly announced that training was over for the day. As he turned to leave, he noticed someone still standing nearby. It was Gong Cheng. Despite the injuries covering his body and the bandages wrapped around him, Gong Cheng had remained there the entire time. Gong Ting looked at him and asked if he was still waiting there. Gong Ting clenched his fists in frustration. He complained that if something was not done soon, he would not be able to sleep at night. With a face full of resentment, he reminded Gong Ting that Si Chen had humiliated him in front of everyone. As Gong Ting's younger brother, he felt deeply embarrassed. He angrily added that Si Chen clearly had no respect for the student council president. Gong Ting remained calm. After listening quietly, he simply replied that he already knew. Gong Ting was stunned by the indifferent response. Then Gong Ting's golden eyes narrowed slightly as he looked ahead. In a calm but confident voice, he stated that he would take care of the matter himself. Inside a luxurious room, Gong Ting sat calmly at a dining table, while Ling Yu sat across from him. She asked how he planned to deal with the incident involving Si Chen. Gong Ting showed little concern. He simply replied that Gong Cheng had been defeated because he was weaker. There was nothing more to it than that. After a moment, Gong Ting asked whether Si Chen was really as strong as his younger brother claimed. Ling Yu smiled slightly. She reminded him that he knew the ranks and abilities of every student in the academy better than anyone. She explained that there were fewer than 10 D-rank students in the entire school, and every one of them had already been recruited into Gong Ting's club. On top of that, ordinary students did not have the same opportunities to enter monster dungeons and gain resources like Gong Ting did. Without those opportunities, average awakeners had almost no way to grow stronger quickly. Ling Yu confidently stated that none of those mediocre awakeners should be able to catch up to him. At the same time, heavy rain poured down over the academy grounds. In the middle of the storm, Si Chen continued running alone through the rain. A heavy 100-kilogram load was strapped to his body as he pushed himself through a grueling 20-kilometer run. Si Chen continued training under the heavy rain. He knew that basic training was the foundation of all strength. An awakener's potential was closely tied to the condition of their body. Only a powerful physique could endure and fully unleash the true power of a class. On his shoulders, Si Chen carried 2 massive 50-kilogram weights while running. Yet even after pushing himself this hard, he felt it was still not enough. As the rain poured down, memories from the future surfaced in his mind. In the year 2160, the Demon King Wrath emerged from a monster dungeon and descended upon the world. In a single moment, countless people were slaughtered. Among the victims was the only family Si Chen had left. His little sister. He remembered desperately holding her as she lay dying in the rain. No matter how much he begged or cried, he could not save her. She had died at Wrath's hands. Wrath did not stop there. The Demon King threw open the gates of hell, allowing the other Demon Kings to invade the human world. Humanity was pushed to the brink of destruction. Thinking about that nightmare, Si Chen's eyes filled with determination. His current training, no matter how difficult, was still far from enough. He had only one goal for now. His first objective was simple. He would kill Wrath. Wrath was the one who had started the end of the world. Si Chen knew exactly how terrifying that future would become if nothing changed. Looking ahead, he reminded himself that he still had 3 years before Wrath's descent. But while those 3 years sounded long, he knew they would pass quickly. At that very moment, Wrath was likely growing stronger somewhere in the world. If he wanted to stop the Demon King, he would have to grow even faster. As Si Chen continued running, a sudden buzzing sound came from his phone. His expression immediately changed. The screen lit up, showing an incoming call. It was from Si Yun. Seeing his little sister's name appear on the screen made his heart skip a beat. Without hesitation, Si Chen answered the call. Holding the phone to his ear while standing in the pouring rain, he spoke nervously. "Hello?" he asked, waiting for his sister's voice on the other end. Standing alone in the rain, Si Chen finally heard a familiar voice from the other side of the call. His sister excitedly asked why Si Chen had called her so many times that day. She explained that she had been participating in a competition, and her phone had run out of battery. She had only just returned to the dormitory and plugged it in. Then she laughed and told him some good news. If she won the competition, they would finally be able to pay off all their overdue rent. Hearing those words, Si Chen fell silent. In that ruined future, he had prayed countless times for a miracle. More than anything, he had wished for a chance to start everything over again. And now, that impossible wish had come true. Rain continued to pour around him as his sister noticed the weather and asked if it was raining where he was. Confused by the silence, she asked why he was not saying anything. A faint smile appeared on Si Chen's face. He had already made up his mind. Even if it cost him everything, he would change the future. Even if he had to walk through endless suffering and descend into a living hell, he would stop the tragedy from happening again. Finally, he answered softly, telling her it was nothing. His eyes trembled slightly as emotions surged through his heart. After a long pause, he admitted the truth. It had simply been so long since he had heard her voice. His sister was confused and asked what Si Chen was talking about. After all, they had spoken only 2 days ago. She cheerfully added that once the competition was over, they would see each other again soon. Then she told Si Chen to wait for good news before happily ending the call. As the call ended, Si Chen stood silently in the rain. Water streamed down his face, while his red eyes stared into the distance. For him, everything had truly started over. Without hesitation, he resumed his training. Even though his body was already exhausted, he forced himself forward and decided to run 3 more laps. He had to become stronger than ever before. Only by growing as fast as possible could he protect the people and things he treasured most. Later that night, Si Chen returned to the dormitory. 8 hours had passed since he had returned to this era. Little by little, he was becoming accustomed to his younger body. Standing beneath the warm shower, he carefully examined himself. His current physical abilities were still weak compared to what he once possessed. However, this body was far younger and had far greater potential for growth. After drying off, Si Chen turned his attention to the most urgent problem. If he wanted to level up and become stronger, he needed to enter a demon den and hunt monsters. The problem was that every demon den was controlled by powerful guilds. The guilds had a complete monopoly over those places. Unless someone was part of the elite, there was almost no chance to enter freely and grow stronger. Lying on his bed, Si Chen frowned as he thought about the situation. How was he supposed to find monsters and level up under those circumstances? Then another thought crossed his mind. There was also that mysterious power known as the power of gluttony. Ever since returning to the past, he had heard its name, but he still did not understand what it truly was. As the question lingered in his mind, he fell asleep, and just then, something unexpected happened. A strange system suddenly appeared before him, saying, "System in Isa." A glowing progress bar slowly filled as the system continued loading. Si Chen was falling from the sky while the percentage climbed higher and higher. After a few moments, the loading was complete. A crimson light spread through the darkness. Then a notification appeared before him, showing Glutton System initiated. As soon as the Glutton System finished activating, Si Chen opened his eyes and saw himself falling. He immediately twisted his body through the strange crimson space and crashed into a sea of red. When he regained his balance, he looked up and froze in shock. Standing before him was a gigantic black tower. It rose high into the sky, surrounded by twisted and sinister structures. The sight was both majestic and terrifying. Si Chen looked around in confusion. His eyes widened as he muttered to himself, wondering where he was, because he clearly remembered falling asleep only moments earlier. Si Chen stared at the enormous tower in the distance, completely stunned. The structure looked ancient and sinister, towering over the crimson world like a monument from another realm. Before he could figure out what it was, the red sea around him suddenly began to ripple. A low growl echoed through the air. One after another, strange creatures emerged from the crimson liquid. Their pale bodies were covered in spots, and their skull-like heads leaked an eerie blue mist from their mouths and eyes. A system notification appeared before Si Chen, informing him that they were Gravehounds, E-rank, Cloud Warriors. The sight immediately put him on guard. Si Chen raised his hand as his class change began loading. Golden lightning crackled around his hand as energy surged through his body. Realization flashed across his eyes. He was surrounded by monsters. Looking around, he quickly guessed that he had somehow been transported into a monster dungeon. The system completed its process. Class change complete. Level 01, Si Chen. Class, Lightning Assassin. Even after seeing all this, Si Chen still did not fully understand what was happening. However, he knew one thing for certain. The monsters charging toward him were a problem that needed to be dealt with immediately. The Gravehounds let out ferocious roars and rushed forward from every direction. Their claws tore through the crimson ground as they lunged at him. The moment the Gravehounds charged, Si Chen moved like a bolt of lightning. Yellow sparks crackled around his body as he activated his powers. In an instant, he flashed past the first monster. A bright streak of lightning cut through the air, and the Gravehound's body split apart. Blood sprayed across the crimson ground as the beast collapsed. A notification immediately appeared, informing him that he had acquired 3 Gravehound fangs. Without slowing down, Si Chen rushed toward the remaining monsters. His movements were so fast that the Gravehounds could barely react. One slash after another tore through their bodies. More notifications appeared, showing that he had acquired 3 more Gravehound fangs. As the monsters fell one after another, Si Chen quickly understood something. With his current strength, Dealing with ordinary E-rank monsters was incredibly easy. They posed almost no threat to him at all. The battle felt completely real. As the last Gravehound died, several notifications appeared before him. He gained 53 experience points for every kill. Then, suddenly, golden light surrounded his body, and a new notification appeared, showing that he had leveled up. Sai Chen became level 2. Seeing that, a smile appeared on Sai Chen's face. This new discovery was more important than anything else. Not only was this strange world real, but he could also gain experience and become stronger here. After reaching level 2, Sai Chen checked his status window. To his surprise, every single attribute had increased by 5 points. His strength, speed, stamina, luck, element, and mental power had all become stronger. A smile slowly appeared on his face. At that moment, Sai Chen realized he had discovered something incredible. He had found a dungeon where he could train and grow stronger completely on his own. Just then, the boss of the dungeon appeared before him. It was the Gravehound King. The massive beast towered over the battlefield. Its crimson eyes glowed with hostility as it stared directly at Sai Chen, but instead of feeling afraid, Sai Chen's eyes shone with excitement. He figured this was the perfect opportunity to test his true abilities. Without hesitation, he charged forward. Lightning burst around his body as he unleashed a series of rapid attacks. Bright yellow flashes sliced through the air, tearing into the Gravehound King's body. The giant monster roared in pain as blood sprayed across the battlefield. A notification appeared, showing that he had gained 320 experience points. Golden light immediately surrounded Sai Chen as he leveled up again. Sai Chen became level 3. A victory screen appeared before him. As a reward, he obtained 18 Gravehound Fangs and 1 Gravehound Crystal. After defeating the Gravehound King, Sai Chen checked his status once again. He quickly noticed something important. Boss monsters granted far more experience than ordinary monsters of the same rank. In such a short amount of time, he had already gained 2 entire levels. As he stood there, a strange red notification suddenly appeared before him, displaying a single word, Devour. Sai Chen frowned. He had never seen this command before. His eyes widened in surprise. Looking at the dead Gravehound King's body, he wondered what exactly the system meant by Devour. Then a thought suddenly crossed his mind. Could it be? Before he could finish thinking, a brilliant red light burst from his hand. The glowing energy flowed directly into his body. Sai Chen stared at the light in shock. Only then did Sai Chen truly understand what the power of gluttony meant. As the power of gluttony activated, crimson energy erupted from the Gravehound King's corpse. The monster's body began to break apart, while streams of red light rushed towards Sai Chen. A glowing progress bar appeared before him, showing the devouring progress. The energy continued flowing into his body until the process was finally complete. Then a notification appeared, showing devouring completed. To Sai Chen's shock, the Gravehound King did not simply disappear. Instead, it transformed into a strange card floating before him. The card displayed the Gravehound King's information, including its class, attributes, and special ability. It had Frosty Physique. The ability granted immunity to cold and increased resistance in low-temperature environments. Sai Chen stared at the card in disbelief. His heart began racing as a shocking realization struck him. The power of gluttony was far more terrifying than he had imagined. After killing an enemy, he could devour it and turn it into one of his own classes. The thought left him completely stunned. But suddenly, Sai Chen's eyes widened as a new realization struck him. As he remembered the lightning coming out of his hand, he recalled seeing the Demon King's hand shining in the same way. Then there was the way he absorbed the monster's body. This reminded him of the Demon King as well. The scene looked exactly like the power once possessed by the Demon King, Lane Yue. Sai Chen's eyes widened in disbelief. The ability known as the power of gluttony, which had originally belonged to the Demon King, had somehow become his. The realization left him stunned. In this world, every awakened person could only possess a single class. Different classes had their own strengths and weaknesses, but that rule had never changed. A flame warrior could not become a star mage. A lightning assassin could not become a cloud warrior. Everyone was restricted to one path for their entire life, but Sai Chen was different. Looking at the newly obtained Gravehound King card and his original lightning assassin card, he finally understood what the power of gluttony truly meant. While everyone else could only follow one path, Sai Chen could possess multiple classes at the same time. Sai Chen's heart began to race. If he could devour one monster and obtain its class, then what would happen if he devoured even more? A shocking thought appeared in his mind. If there was no limit to the monsters he could absorb, then he could potentially obtain an endless number of classes. The idea was so unbelievable that even he found it difficult to accept. However, that only created even more questions. Why had he been given such a terrifying power in the first place? And what exactly was the mysterious magic tower standing behind him? As Si Chen stared at the towering structure, trying to understand its secrets, a sudden rumble echoed through the area. The entire world trembled violently. Without warning, an overwhelming pressure descended from above. Si Chen's body instantly stiffened. Cold sweat ran down his face as his instincts screamed danger. The crushing aura was so powerful that it felt as though it could destroy everything around him. His expression turned serious as he struggled to endure the pressure. Then a terrifying voice suddenly echoed through the strange world. It calmly told Si Chen that he had finally arrived. The voice added that it had been waiting for him for a very long time. A hooded figure slowly appeared before him. The being stood surrounded by dark energy, holding a massive purple sword. Even stranger, it spoke Si Chen's name as if it had known him all along. At that moment, Si Chen immediately understood the danger he was facing. The government classified both awakeners and monsters according to their combat power. From weakest to strongest, the ranks were E, D, C, B, A, and S. The terrifying figure standing before him was no ordinary monster. Si Chen gritted his teeth and quickly moved, barely avoiding the devastating attacks that tore through the crimson world. His breathing became heavy as he recalled his previous life. Back then, he had risked his life countless times just to reach S rank. But now, after his regression, his current strength was only around D rank. The difference between them was simply too great. The monster standing before him was an S rank boss. Si Chen could clearly feel the overwhelming gap between them. The enemy surpassed him in every single attribute. Whether it was strength, speed, stamina, or combat power, the boss completely outclassed him. Si Chen wondered what kind of monster dungeon this place was. More importantly, he could not believe that an S-rank monster existed here. His mind was filled with questions. How did that monster know his name? The battle continued without pause. Si Chen and the hooded monster exchanged dozens of attacks. Again and again, they clashed across the battlefield. Yet something felt strange. The monster had countless opportunities to kill him. With its overwhelming strength, ending his life would have been effortless. But every attack avoided his vital points. Instead of killing him, the monster simply knocked him down over and over again. A powerful slash suddenly struck him and sent him flying backward. Pain exploded through his body as he crashed heavily onto the ground. Struggling to breathe, Si Chen slowly pushed himself up. His body was covered in injuries, and every movement felt painful. At that moment, the monster calmly approached him. Beneath the hood, its terrifying face became visible. A cold voice echoed through the crimson world as it asked whether he was still struggling. Si Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and finally understood the monster's true intention. The creature did not want to kill him. It wanted him to submit. The hooded monster stood before the towering structure and calmly spoke. It told Si Chen to think carefully about the offer it was about to make. It asked whether he would stay there and guard the Tower of Darkness by its side. The monster added that opportunities like this did not come often. But Si Chen's answer was immediate. No matter what happened, there was no way he would remain trapped in that hellish place. The moment those words left his mouth, a terrifying slash flashed through the air. A purple blade cut straight across his body. Blood exploded outward as Si Chen's eyes widened in shock. The attack had struck him before he could even react. The monster slowly lowered its weapon and looked at him coldly. It asked if he truly believed it would not kill him. Then it revealed the reason for its patience. The creature said that it had only tolerated him for so long because he was the first and only person who had ever managed to reach that place. Purple energy suddenly burst from the dead monster on the ground. Strange flames and lightning-like currents spread through the crimson world as the hooded monster released even more of its terrifying power. The creature looked at Si Chen and said it would ask him one last time. At the same time, its strength and stamina continued to rise. The entire area shook violently. Massive rocks floated into the air as its overwhelming aura crushed everything around it. Then the monster gave Si Chen a final choice. He could stay there and serve by its side, or he could be completely destroyed. Facing the impossible pressure, Si Chen remained silent for a moment. Yellow lightning crackled around his body as determination filled his eyes. Finally, he made his choice. There was only one answer he could give. He chose to kill the monster. With a furious roar, Si Chen exploded forward like a bolt of lightning, but the monster simply laughed. To it, Si Chen's desperate attack was nothing more than a joke. The creature mocked him as countless giant rocks and waves of purple energy surged forward, crashing through the battlefield with unstoppable force. Si Chen pushed his body to the limit and charged forward again. Golden lightning exploded around him as he rushed toward the S-rank boss at incredible speed. This time, however, he was not attacking blindly. After exchanging countless blows with the monster, Si Chen had finally discovered its pattern. He realized that before every swing, the monster needed a brief moment to gather strength. The delay lasted only 0.4 of a second, but for someone as fast as him, that tiny opening was enough. Si Chen focused completely on the monster's movements. By watching the angle of its wrists, he could predict where the blades would travel. As the purple blades came slashing toward him, Si Chen instantly read their trajectory and dodged at the last possible moment. Golden lightning flashed across the battlefield as Si Chen slipped past the attack. More importantly, he discovered something even better. After every strike, the monster needed another brief recovery period of 0.2 of a second before it could attack again. He realized that if he timed everything perfectly and struck during the monster's brief opening, he could attack while it was completely defenseless. Golden lightning gathered around his weapon as he activated Electroblade. In an instant, Si Chen's attack pierced straight into the monster's chest. Lightning exploded outward, flooding the S-rank boss's body with electricity. Si Chen knew very well that a D-rank awakened like him could never kill an S-rank monster with a single attack. However, that was never his goal. Electroblade had the power to condense electricity into a blade, greatly increasing its damage and giving it a chance to paralyze enemies when it struck a vital point. The attack worked. The monster's body froze as paralysis spread through it. Si Chen immediately poured everything he had into the strike. If the paralysis lasted even a few seconds, that would be enough. For the first time, he finally managed to create some distance between himself and the terrifying monster. Without wasting a single moment, he activated his second skill, Godspeed. A powerful electric current surged through his body, increasing his speed many times over. Si Chen shot across the battlefield like a bolt of lightning. His eyes burned with determination. This was the chance he had been waiting for. A few seconds were all he needed to escape. While fighting the monster, he had secretly been observing the entire area. As far as he could tell, there was only one source of light in this endless world of darkness, and that lone light was now his only hope of survival. Si Chen raced toward the distant light with everything he had. Golden lightning crackled around his body as he stretched out his hand, hoping to reach it before the monster recovered. But just as he was about to reach it, something unexpected happened. The light suddenly vanished. The ground exploded as the monster rose from the red smoke. Purple energy burst around its body, and its voice echoed through the empty space. It calmly told him that the light he had chased was only an afterimage. The exit he was looking for had never existed. This place was not a normal monster dungeon. The creature sounded amused. It said that it was impressive how quickly he had found a flaw in its technique. It found him interesting. Even in the depths of despair, the monster said, Si Chen was still able to stay calm, study the situation, and risk his life for even the smallest chance of survival. Dark energy twisted and gathered as the monster revealed its true form. A terrifying figure stood there, surrounded by purple flames and shadows. It was called the Abyssal Fiend, a star warrior. Seeing that form, Si Chen's eyes widened in shock. He had seen that shape before. It was the same presence he had once seen on the Demon King, Lan Yue. In his previous life, his final battle had been against Lan Yue. He remembered that fight clearly. During the battle, Lan Yue kept switching between many powerful classes. One moment, he fought like a dragon made of ice, moving at incredible speed. The next moment, he changed again, using different powers and overwhelming attacks. The sky had exploded with light and energy. Flames and lightning clashed. Monsters and strange forms appeared one after another as Lan Yue shifted between abilities without pause. Now, seeing the Abyssal Fiend's form, those memories rushed back to him. The power, the presence, the way it felt, it was the same. Just like before, when he faced the Demon King Lan Yue in his final fight, he clearly remembered that one of Lan Yue's forms looked exactly like this. The horned figure standing before him, covered in dark armor and purple flames, was the same as the one from his past life. That could only mean one thing. At some point, this being must have been devoured by Lan Yue's power of gluttony. And now, that same power of gluttony had merged with his own body. A shocking thought crossed his mind. Could this place be inside him? He stared at the tall, strange tower rising from the red ground, facing the abyssal fiend across the silent space. The monster watched him closely and said that he was impressive. Not only could he stay calm under heavy pressure, but he also had a sharp mind. It declared that he had proven himself worthy of everything in this place. Si Chen was shocked when the demon said that everything here belonged to him. Then a golden key appeared in the air. It shone brightly. It was called the Time Rift Key. It was an SS rank item. It was the only key that could open the gates of the Tower of Darkness. The demon explained that this was the key to the Tower of Darkness. He then said that Lan Yue had devoured countless vicious demons. The strongest among them were sealed inside that tower. The demon told him to devour them and grow stronger. He said that Si Chen should turn all of them into his own strength. As he passed the key to Si Chen, a system message appeared, saying that he had acquired one Time Rift key. Holding the shining key in his hand, Si Chen looked confused and asked why the demon was doing all this. He asked why the demon was even helping him. The demon answered calmly. He said that even among demons, there were differences in morality. He then revealed the truth. The demon kings had slaughtered his entire clan because of their own greed. The demon said that he had been waiting a long time for a chance to take revenge on the demon kings. He felt lucky that this chance had finally come. He said that the demon king was right. Si Chen was the only hope, the only one who had a real chance to succeed. Hearing this, Si Chen looked confused and asked who he was talking about. The demon did not answer directly. Instead, he said that all the answers were inside the Tower of Darkness. He told Si Chen to go there and find the truth for himself. Then the demon told him to take his powers and seek revenge against the demon kings. Hearing that, Si Chen was shocked and repeated his words, unable to believe what he had just heard. The demon continued speaking. From this moment on, he said, Si Chen must become unstoppable. He must open the gates of the Tower of Darkness and devour everything inside it. The demon warned him that the demons inside the tower would not show him the same mercy he had shown. They were the most cunning and ferocious demons in existence. He said Si Chen would have to endure everything. He would have to conquer them all. He declared that Si Chen alone must rise to the very top of the world, and only after that must he devour every single demon king. As the demon's body began to break apart and fade away, he said that only someone like Si Chen was worthy of holding his powers. In the end, the demon's remaining energy gathered and flew towards Si Chen. The power entered his body, and a strange energy started to form in his hand. A message appeared in front of him, showing that the devouring process had begun. The next second, a bright golden light surrounded Si Chen as another message appeared before him. He had leveled up to level 10. The system declared victory and rewarded him with 2 fiendish nether bones. Si Chen lowered his eyes and calmly said that he understood. He promised that he would carry on the will that had been entrusted to him. Then another message appeared. The devouring process was complete. A new card appeared before him. It was the Abyssal Fiend. It showed its rank as Star Warrior and displayed its abilities. It could absorb stamina and strength from nearby corpses to increase its own power. It could also control gravity in 3 stages to crush its enemies. Si Chen raised his hand and swore that he would make them pay with their blood. The next second, everything turned black. A loud voice shouted for everyone to get up and hurry, saying that they could not be late and had to wear their uniforms. Si Chen slowly opened his eyes. He found himself lying in his dorm room bed. Looking around in confusion, he realized that he was back in the dorm room. Si Chen looked down at his body and pulled his shirt aside. He was shocked to see that all his wounds were completely healed. He wondered if everything that had happened was just a dream. But then his system screen appeared. It clearly showed his name, Si Chen, and that he was level 10. All his stats, strength, speed, stamina, luck, element, and mental, were at 150. He also saw the skill cards and items he had gained, including the Abyssal Fiend. That proved it was not a dream. Everything had really happened. He realized that he had reached level 10 in just one night. He began to wonder what rank that would place him in. At that moment, Shang Zuo called out to him. He leaned over and joked that someone had been bragging about how strong Si Chen had become last night. He teased him, asking if he was trying to take his spot as the top dog in the dorm. Then he urged him to hurry up, saying that the rank assessments were about to start. He wanted to see how good Si Chen really was. Hearing that, Si Chen just looked at him with calm red eyes. Outside, Shang Zuo confidently ate his bread and explained that even though everyone in their dorm was E rank, each rank was divided into 3 tiers, low, mid, and high. He proudly said that the others were just low-tier E-rankers, while he was a mid-tier E-ranker. He added that there was a huge power gap between each tier. Because of that, he claimed he could easily defeat 10 of them at once. He even bragged that since he had not been tested in 2 years, his rank might have increased again. Sai Chen walked behind him silently with the others, saying nothing. Then Ma Long told Sai Chen that when it was his turn he should go all out. He suggested that if Sai Chen managed to reach D rank, it would shock everyone. Si Chen lowered his eyes slightly and repeated the words in his mind. A D rank was not a big deal to him. Soon they arrived at the assessment area. The sound of chatter filled the air as students gathered outside. Sang Zui looked around in shock and said he could not believe that everyone was already there. On the big screen in front of the school building, it read, National Awakener University Ranking Assessment Ceremony. But suddenly, noise came from the side. Some students were being pushed around near the entrance. A silver-haired boy forced his way forward, telling others not to touch him and to get out of the way. Someone gasped and said those were Gong Cheng's minions. Another student whispered that they should stay away from them. The silver-haired boy walked in with a dark expression, his eyes cold and threatening. Seeing him, Xiang Zuo froze in fear and realized they were looking at them. He was scared of being beaten again, but this time, Si Chen stood quietly behind them, calm and silent, looking at the silver-haired man. 2 of Gong Cheng's men froze in shock when they saw Si Chen. Their faces turned pale and were covered in sweat. One of them tried to speak, but his voice trembled. Then they both quickly bowed and shouted respectfully, calling him Si Chen, Sir. Shang Zuo and Shang Yu were stunned. They could not believe what they were seeing. The same men who had been acting so arrogant just moments ago were now extremely polite to Si Chen. Shang Zuo wondered why they were being so respectful to him. Ma Long crossed his arms proudly and told them that he had really been telling the truth. Meanwhile, Si Chen did not react much. He simply turned and walked away calmly, as if nothing had happened. But then, from behind him, someone called out loudly. Si Chen slowly lifted his eyes, his red gaze sharp and steady. A tall man with gray hair and a relaxed smile stepped forward. He said he had heard that someone had gotten into a fight with Gong Cheng yesterday. His name was Cheng Di, a student council officer. He looked at Si Chen and asked if he knew that Gong Cheng was the younger brother of their great student council president, Gong Ting. Shang Zuo and the others were shocked. They whispered that it was really Cheng Di from the student council. They knew that he was not only the president's loyal follower, but also a powerful D-ranker. Shang Zuo began to sweat and wondered what someone like Cheng Di could possibly want with Si Chen. He also felt that something about the situation seemed strange. Cheng Di leaned closer to Si Chen with a smile. He said he had an excellent sense of smell and could always detect the scent of a true powerhouse. But after staring at Si Chen for a moment, his smile twisted. He said that all he could smell from him was the stench of a loser outcast who would never amount to anything. Hearing that, Si Chen leaned forward and asked Chan Di if he was a dog or something. Chan Di's face twisted in anger. He shouted, asking what Si Chen had just said, but before things could escalate further, a cold voice ordered him to stop. It was the student council president, Gong Ting. He walked forward with a calm and steady expression. He said that he had already thoroughly investigated the incident and determined that Gong Cheng was the one at fault. He added that it was only fair for Gong Cheng to face the consequences of his actions. Cheng Di immediately backed down and agreed respectfully, calling him president. But before leaving, Gong Ting looked at Si Chen silently for a moment, his golden eyes serious and unreadable. Si Chen also looked at him, his red eyes remaining calm and indifferent. Just then, an announcement echoed across the campus. The speaker asked for everyone's attention and declared that the assessments were about to begin. The students were informed that the evaluations would be conducted in the order of their student ID numbers. Each person was instructed to proceed to the stage in an orderly manner when their name was called. Gong Ting turned and said that it was time to go, adding that they should prepare for the ranking assessments. Inwardly, he thought that Si Chen did not seem like much of a threat. Behind him, Cheng Di grinned and responded cheerfully that he understood. From above, inside a high-rise building overlooking the campus, a woman was watching everything unfold. A tall man walked up to her and asked what had made her come to observe today's rank assessments, wondering if someone interesting had caught her eye. That woman was the vice president of the student council, Ling Yu. She smiled faintly as she held her teacup. She remarked that the assessments this time might be quite interesting. 1 hour later, the ranking assessments were still underway. An announcement rang out, stating that the next student up for the rank assessment was Shang Zuo. His name appeared on the large screen along with his profile. From the crowd, Ma Feng shouted encouragement, telling him that he had this. Xiang Zuo stepped forward with a determined grin. He declared that it was time to see how strong he really was. He entered the specially designed monster dungeon where the assessments were conducted individually. Inside the artificial dungeon, a magical core pulsed steadily, cables stretching from it in all directions as it absorbed energy. The air hummed with a deep, rhythmic thump. The rules were simple. The Awakener had to unleash their full energy toward the magical core. With a fierce shout, Xiang Zuo gathered his power between his hands and released it in a blazing burst toward the core. Xiang Zuo's attack struck the magical core with a deafening boom. The entire artificial dungeon trembled as the core absorbed the blazing energy. It pulsed violently, cables twitching and vibrating as waves of power surged through them. A low buzzing sound filled the chamber as the magical core transmitted the energy readings through the cables to the external equipment. Outside, the machinery lit up and began processing the data. The system hummed steadily. Finally, the results were digitally displayed on the large screen. Shang Guzor's name appeared, and beside it, his rank was revealed. E rank, mid-tier. The recording was declared complete. One of the staff members noticed that the rest of the data had not appeared yet, and questioned it. In the crowd, Ma Feng clenched his fists, saying it was coming. Excitement rippled through him, and he shouted that the main event was about to begin. Beside them, Si Chen stood quietly, his red eyes fixed calmly on the screen. The system explained that besides the current ranking, the assessment could measure another important piece of data, potential. This potential represented the highest rank an Awakener could achieve in the future. Awakeners with high potential were more likely to receive attention from the government. The final result was displayed. Xiang Zuo's current rank was E rank, mid-tier. His maximum potential was C rank. Standing outside, he sighed in disappointment. He said that his rank had not improved at all in the past 2 years. He had truly hoped to reach D rank. An announcement called for the next student to step up for the rank assessment. Nearby, Ma Feng and Xiang Yu tried to comfort Xiang Zu, telling him not to worry and saying they would probably do even worse. Ma Feng added that he was not the only one who would fail to reach D rank, and that they would all be in the same situation. Their results were also out. Xiang, you had received E rank, low tier, with C rank potential. Ma Long had also received E rank, low tier, with C rank potential. Ma Feng told him that there were not many D rank students at the school anyway, and there might not even be any new ones this year. But just then, the screen flashed once, saying that someone's current rank was D rank, low tier, and their maximum potential was B rank. Seeing that, Xiang Zuo's whole group froze in shock. Their faces turned pale. Disbelief spread through the group as they stared at the unexpected result. A student shouted in shock that it was the first D rank promotion of the day. A female student came out, and the massive screen displayed that her current rank was D rank, low tier, and her potential was B rank. Then, a few moments later, Chang Di's result appeared. His current rank was D rank, low tier. His maximum potential was A rank. Chang Di stepped out confidently from the gate, adjusting his posture with a playful grin as murmurs spread through the audience. Nearby, Ma Feng and his friends stood in stunned silence. Ma Feng covered his face in disbelief, unable to process what he had just witnessed. This was already the 8th D rank promotion so far. From above, 2 staff members observed the scene. One admitted that he could not believe there were so many talented D ranks this year. The other agreed, explaining that even low-tier D ranks were impressive for students with no combat experience. Typically, only 2 or 3 students reach D rank each year. If things continued at this pace, this year's ranking assessment would truly become a spectacle. The announcement for the next student up for the rank assessment echoed. It was Gong Ting. He stepped forward calmly, adjusting his tie, his expression steady and composed as the crowd waited in anticipation. Someone from the crowd shouted in excitement that it was finally Gong Ting's turn. Whispers quickly spread among the students. They recognized him immediately. He was the student council president and also the heir to the Imperial Guild. Many called him the Chosen One, a man with countless titles under his belt. Standing calmly among the crowd, Si Chen looked at Gong Ting with no visible reaction. His expression remained steady. As the large screen displayed Gong Ting's name, rumors circulated that he had already obtained a D rank during his ranking assessment 2 years ago. This year, the highest promotion achieved so far had only been D rank, low tier. In the entire history of the school, the highest rank ever recorded was D rank, mid-tier. Because of that, no one could predict what rank he would reach. Inside the assessment chamber, that strange organic device hung in the darkness. Wires and tubes extended from it in every direction. Its single eye slowly opened, glowing faintly. Gong Ting stepped forward without hesitation. He reached out his hand toward the machine. In his mind, he remained clear and composed. Only by revealing his full strength during the graduation battle examination would he be able to leave the greatest impression. For now, he needed to restrain himself and hold back part of his power. Even while holding back, he was certain that he would still remain the top student in the entire school. A faint buzzing sound filled the air as the assessment system activated. The screen began to fluctuate, showing unstable readings under rank and potential. One of the instructors stared at the display, sweat forming on his forehead. He noticed the unusual color appearing in the results and muttered in shock. The screen finally stabilized. It showed that his current rank was D rank, high tier, and his potential rank was S rank. Seeing that, the entire venue fell silent for a moment. Then the realization struck. The student council president had reached D rank, high tier. Not only that, he possessed the potential of an S rank. The crowd erupted into chaos. Shouts and screams filled the air as students struggled to process what they had just witnessed. Some could not believe their eyes. He had become the first person in the school's history to achieve such a result. Gong Ting's supporters' voices rang out in excitement and admiration. They proudly declared that this was their president. They cheered for him loudly, chanting for him to live long as the undisputed leader of the school. The crowd was still in shock. Ma Feng stared at the screen in disbelief, whispering that someone from their school actually possessed the potential of an S rank. He could hardly believe what he had just witnessed. To him, this moment felt historic. Of everyone in the crowd, only Si Chen was standing silently, completely unimpressed by Gong Ting's result. The instructors quickly confirmed the results. Gong Ting had achieved D rank, high tier, with the potential of an S rank. One of the staff members asked whether they should report this directly to the higher authorities. Without hesitation, the response came that they absolutely should. An awakener with S-rank potential was internationally recognized as a rare treasure. Such individuals were guaranteed special attention and protection from the government. And with Gong Ting also being the heir to the Imperial Guild, it was certain that this news would dominate national headlines. The final results were displayed clearly. Gong Ting's current grade D rank, high tier, potential, S rank. From high above, the man standing beside Vice President Ling Yu remarked that this year's assessment had uncovered an incredible number of talents. This man was Yuan Long, the headmaster of the National Awakener University. He turned his gaze thoughtfully and said that Ling Yu must have already known about Gong Ting's S-rank potential. That was likely why she had come in person to watch. Ling Yu replied that she had not known about Gong Ting's S-rank potential. She added that she had not come solely for him. The headmaster responded with mild surprise, asking what she meant. With a faint smile, she continued that compared to Gong Ting, there was someone else whose results interested her even more. Meanwhile, among the crowd of students, Si Chen stood quietly with his head lowered, his expression unreadable. The announcer's voice rang out clearly, declaring that the next student up for the rank assessment was Si Chen. As his name echoed through the area, Si Chen slowly lifted his gaze, his red eyes sharp and calm. As Si Chen's name was called, Chen Di walked up to him with a mocking grin, calling him a loser. He told Si Chen to make sure his dorm looked presentable. He laughed and said that when Si Chen's results came out, they had better not show another low-tier E rank. Chang Di continued mocking him, saying that if all 4 members of their dorm ended up as E rank losers, they would become the biggest joke in the entire school. He pointed out the results of Si Chen's dormmates. Shang Zuo had been rated E-rank mid-tier with C-rank potential, while Shang Yu and Ma Long had both received E-rank low-tier with C-rank potential. According to him, a group like theirs would only embarrass themselves if they showed up for the graduation combat examination. Hearing those insults, Ma Long could not stay quiet. He shouted angrily and told Chang Di to just wait and see. He declared that Si Chen would definitely prove him wrong and make him regret those words. Soon, everyone's attention shifted to the assessment platform. Si Chen stepped forward and entered the glowing assessment gate. His name immediately appeared on the large screen as the examination began. From the crowd, Shang Zuo stared at him nervously and wondered whether Si Chen could really pull it off. As Si Chen entered the assessment space, he found himself standing before a strange machine. At its center was that creature connected to countless cables. The creature suddenly opened its single eye and stared directly at him. Si Chen remained calm. His red eyes glowed faintly as he reached out toward the machine. At that moment, he thought about the future that awaited every awakener. In this era, the best way for an awakener to secure a successful future was to join one of the powerful high-ranking guilds. For most students, the only opportunity to prove their strength to those elite guilds came during the graduation combat examination. It was the most important event of their school years and determined many of their future opportunities. The graduation combat examination was organized around teams of 10 members. Students were free to choose their own teammates and form squads however they wished. The team that ultimately claimed first place would receive a prize beyond ordinary imagination. Every member of the winning team would be directly recruited by the nation's most prestigious organization, the Imperial Guild. The ranking assessments were not only meant to help awakeners discover their ranks, they also served a much more important purpose: helping students find teammates for the graduation combat examination. Because of this system, students quickly gathered around the strongest people. Changdi excitedly introduced Yan Lin, proudly announcing that he was a newly promoted low-tier D-rank awakener. The group was thrilled, believing that with him joining, their 10-person team was finally complete. They boasted that all 9 of the newly promoted D-rank students were already on their team. Once Gong Cheng joined as the 10th member, they were certain they would take first place in the graduation combat examination. This method made it easy for the strongest team to form. The students surrounded their leader, praising him and confidently declaring that he would be the team's MVP and lead them to victory. However, while the strongest gathered together, the weakest students were left behind. Shang Zuo, Ma Long, and the others stood apart from the crowd with gloomy expressions. In this world, the strong naturally stayed together, while the weak were ignored and gradually pushed aside. It was simply the harsh law of survival. As time passed, Ma Long became nervous. Adjusting his glasses, he wondered how long Si Chen had been inside the assessment chamber. Looking at the large screen, he noticed that nothing had changed at all. Si Chen's information remained blank. As the waiting dragged on, many students began to lose interest. Some laughed and mocked Si Chen, saying that he was probably so weak that the system could not even assign him a rank. Others believed the assessment was already finished and suggested returning to their dorms. Meanwhile, Gong Ting was preparing to leave. Changdi confidently said that the remaining students were all useless anyway, so there was no point in waiting for them. Since their team was already full, he suggested they go celebrate with karaoke instead. Gong Ting agreed and instructed Changdi to gather the rest of the team so they could leave together. At that exact moment, the assessment screen suddenly began to flicker. Strange lights flashed across the rank display, immediately drawing everyone's attention. A few seconds later, the result finally appeared. Si Chen's rank was revealed as high-tier D rank. The entire field instantly fell silent. The students who had been mocking him froze in shock. Shang Zuo, Ma Long, and the others stared at the screen with wide eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Then they shouted in disbelief that Si Chen had actually reached high-tier D rank. Shang Zuo jumped around excitedly, saying they had known all along that he was hiding his true strength. Gong Ting and his companions were stunned. Chang Di nearly lost his composure and shouted in disbelief upon seeing that Si Chen had achieved high-tier D rank. Meanwhile, inside the testing room, that eyeball-like magical core began pulsing rapidly. A system warning appeared, stating that an abnormality had been detected in the magical core and that the assessment result might be inaccurate. The system requested that the student undergo the test again. Seeing that, Si Chen remained calm. He realized that the previous test had only measured his normal body. He had not activated any of his special classes. Looking at his status screen, he saw that all of his attributes had reached 150 points at level 10. Based on that result, he estimated that a level 10 awakener was roughly equal to a high-tier D rank. Curious about the true limits of his power, Si Chen decided to perform another test. He activated his class-changing ability, and a glowing message appeared before him. A moment later, the class change was completed. Si Chen transformed into his powerful class, the Gravehound King. After seeing the transformation, Si Chen calmly decided that his next step would be to test the strength of his current weakest class and see how the assessment system reacted. As Si Chen continued the assessment, the ranking screen suddenly began to flicker and distort. The previous high-tier D rank result became unstable, and everyone watched nervously as the system recalculated his strength. A moment later, the screen changed again and displayed mid-tier C rank. The entire testing ground fell into chaos. The students who had already been shocked by the D rank result were now completely stunned. Ma Long and the others screamed in disbelief. They could not understand how Seichen's rank had increased again. Changdi, who had mocked him earlier, stared at the screen with a pale face. Even Gong Ting was left speechless. Changdi shouted that there was no way Seichen could suddenly become a C rank. He insisted that the testing machine had to be malfunctioning. The instructors and exam staff were equally confused. The elderly examiner wiped the sweat from his forehead and admitted that he had never seen anything like this before. The rank had changed multiple times during a single assessment, something that should have been impossible. Many began wondering if there was a serious internal system error. At that moment, the magical core connected to the assessment machine started beating violently again. Its giant eye twitched nervously as warning messages appeared once more. The system announced that it had detected another abnormality within the magical core. It warned that the assessment results might be inaccurate, and instructed the student to conduct the test again. After seeing his C-rank result, Seichen remained calm. He thought that if his ordinary form had already reached mid-tier C rank, then his other two classes should be far stronger and likely rank above C rank. Without hesitation, he activated another class change. Purple energy burst from his body as the strange magical core connected to the testing system began cracking and trembling violently. Moments later, the transformation was complete. Seichen's new class was revealed as Abyssal Fiend, a powerful level 10 class surrounded by dark purple energy and crackling power. Looking at his transformed body, he decided it was finally time to test the full extent of his strength. The magical core immediately reacted. Its giant eye widened in fear as its heartbeat grew faster and faster. Suddenly, dark purple clouds gathered high in the sky. A massive vortex formed overhead, spinning violently as lightning flashed through it. The sky itself seemed to twist as waves of energy spread across the testing grounds. Everyone below looked up in shock. Students and instructors alike froze as they watched the terrifying phenomenon above them. Panic spread through the crowd as people struggled to understand what was happening. As the terrifying phenomenon continued, Shang Zhu trembled and muttered that this was a divine phenomenon. He felt certain that this day would be remembered in history. Looking at the chaos unfolding before them, he feared that their dormitory had produced a truly earth-shattering monster. Meanwhile, the assessment screen began malfunctioning even more severely. The rank and potential indicators flickered wildly. Then the potential slowly showed S rank. The elderly examiner watched with wide eyes and a trembling body. He could barely believe it. In shock, he wondered if another S-rank genius was really about to appear. Even Gong Ting, who had doubted Seichen, was left speechless. Then the situation became even stranger. The giant golden S on the screen started flickering violently as more glitches spread across it. Suddenly, a bright red warning message appeared. The screen then suddenly showed SS rank, and another red warning message appeared. Then it changed to SS-rank. Again, a warning appeared, stating that an error had occurred and that Seichen's potential could not be determined because it had exceeded the system's maximum limits. The people watching were stunned beyond words. Changdi's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets as he screamed in disbelief. A moment later, the overloaded magical core finally reached its breaking point. With a deafening explosion, the testing device shattered and burst into flames. The shockwave swept through the area, leaving everyone horrified. The two examiners immediately realized the danger. The older examiner shouted that the magical core was overloading and ordered everyone to move quickly. He and his assistant rushed toward the testing area, determined to make sure none of the students had been harmed by the explosion. Inside the ruined testing chamber, electricity crackled through the air as the machine continued to malfunction. Worried, the examiners called out loudly, asking whether Seichen was all right. The two examiners hurried into the ruined testing chamber and were immediately stunned by what they saw. The magical core, which had powered the entire testing system, was no longer functioning. Its surface was cracked and shriveled, looking like a dried corpse. The older examiner stared at it in disbelief and exclaimed that the magical core was dead. Unable to accept what had happened, he tried to find a reasonable explanation. He wondered if the core had simply been used for too long during the day and had finally worn out. Meanwhile, Seichen turned around and started walking out. Unlike everyone else, he knew the real reason. He quietly concluded that he had pushed the magical core beyond its limits, causing it to rupture. However, he was not too concerned, because something valuable had come from the incident. A notification appeared before him. The devouring process had finished successfully. His power of gluttony had absorbed the magical core's abilities and turned them into a new power. The newly acquired ability was called Delicate Magical Core, an A-rank skill. It allowed him to detect the ranks of all objects within a 100-meter radius. If a dangerous threat entered that range, the skill would automatically issue a warning. After obtaining the delicate magical core ability, Si Chen walked out of the testing ground. As he came out, he immediately activated his new skill. A faint glow appeared in his eyes, and the world around him changed. He could now see the ranks of everyone nearby displayed above their heads. As he looked around, he saw that most of the students were only E rank, with some being mid-tier and others high-tier. Seeing everyone's strength laid out so clearly, he realized how useful the new ability was. But then he saw something surprising. As his gaze landed on Gong Ting, he realized that Gong Ting had also been hiding his true strength. The ability revealed him as a high-tier C rank. Si Chen judged that while Gong Ting was stronger than most students, his overall talent was still fairly average compared to truly outstanding geniuses. Meanwhile, the two examiners had already come up with an explanation for the accident. Standing before the crowd, the older examiner awkwardly announced that the magical core had apparently suffered excessive strain and had sadly stopped functioning. Because of this unexpected incident, the assessment would have to be suspended temporarily. He further explained that Si Chen's ranking data might have been corrupted during the malfunction. The academy would report the incident to higher authorities for investigation. As for the remaining students who had not yet taken the test, they were instructed to return the following day. By then, a replacement testing facility would be prepared so the assessments could continue normally. While the crowd reacted to the sudden announcement, Si Chen came down from the stage. His friends immediately gathered around him. They completely ignored the academy's explanation and firmly believed the test results were real. In their eyes, the data could not be wrong. They excitedly declared that Si Chen was a true genius and asked what he wanted to eat to celebrate. Si Chen suggested returning to the dormitory together. However, before they could leave, Chang Di stepped forward with a sneer. He mocked Si Chen, saying there was no way someone like him could ever be a C rank, much less possess S rank potential. He insisted that the testing machine had obviously malfunctioned. Chang Di continued ranting without stopping. He accused Si Chen of damaging the magical core and trying to walk away without taking responsibility. He complained that because of Si Chen, the student council members would have to wait until the next day for their assessments. He even demanded to know how Si Chen planned to compensate everyone for wasting their time. As the insults continued, golden lightning began crackling around Si Chen's hand. His eyes turned cold, and an intimidating aura surrounded him. Inwardly, he grew increasingly annoyed and thought that the noisy man simply would not stop talking. For a brief moment, he even considered getting rid of him. Just as the tension was about to explode, Gong Ting stepped forward. He calmly told Chang Di that enough was enough and reminded him not to be so rude to a teammate. Chang Di froze in shock. He stared at Gong Ting in disbelief and repeated the word teammate, unable to understand what he meant. Gong Ting then turned towards Si Chen with a faint smile. He invited Si Chen to join his team. He explained that if they worked together, they could participate in the graduation combat examination as teammates. With their combined strength, he believed they could achieve the highest score in the academy's history. Saying that, he extended his hand towards Si Chen, who simply looked at him with his glowing red eyes. The students were stunned when they saw Gong Ting personally inviting Si Chen to join his team. Whispers quickly spread through the crowd. Everyone knew that being on Gong Ting's team almost guaranteed first place in the graduation combat examination. Cheng Di's expression immediately darkened. If Si Chen joined the team, someone would have to be removed. He did not know how he could explain that to the other members. After all, countless students had tried every possible way to get into Gong Ting's team, and many had even offered bribes, yet they were all rejected. He could not understand what made Si Chen so special. Even so, since Gong Ting had personally extended the invitation, Chang Di knew he could not openly oppose it. He forced a smile, gritted his teeth and reluctantly welcomed Si Chen to the team. However, before he could say anything else, Si Chen brushed aside the offered hand. Then, without the slightest hesitation, he gave a simple reply. He was not interested. Chang Di froze in shock when Si Chen rejected the invitation. Gong Ting's eyes widened, and he could hardly believe what he had just heard. Chang Di shouted, asking Si Chen if he even understood what he was saying. Their team was the strongest in the entire school. But Si Chen did not even turn around, and simply replied that he did not care. The answer left Chang Di speechless. Before he could continue arguing, Si Chen glanced at him with cold red eyes and said that he was too loud. He warned Chang Di not to bother him again. With that, Si Chen turned around and started walking away. He told his companion that it was time to head back. Chang Di stood there trembling with anger. He wanted to say something more, but the words got stuck in his throat as he watched Si Chen leave. The surrounding students were equally stunned. They could not believe that Si Chen had actually rejected Gong Ting, the student council president. Many of them secretly admired his courage, while others thought he must be aiming for first place himself. After all, despite all the confusion surrounding the assessment, Si Chen had still received a mid-tier C rank result. If his true abilities were even greater than that, then the upcoming graduation examination would become far more interesting. Ma Long laughed at the embarrassed expressions on Chang Di and Gong Ting's faces. He joked that Chang Di had been acting arrogant in front of everyone, only to be rejected publicly. Shang Zuo was impressed by Si Chen's courage. Not everyone would dare refuse an invitation from Gong Ting. However, Gong Ting himself remained calm. Seeing Chang Di's shocked reaction, he simply smiled and said it was not a problem. In his eyes, Si Chen clearly had his own plans and goals. As Si Chen walked away from the field, the discussion continued. Watching everything unfold, Headmaster Yuan Long sighed and said it was a shame that the two talented students had failed to team up. He had been looking forward to seeing them set a new record for the school. Standing beside him, Ling Yu smiled faintly. She believed the situation had become even more interesting because of Si Chen's decision. She explained that Gong Ting had grown up with wealth, influence, and endless advantages. Refusing an invitation from someone like him was not a simple matter. Si Chen's rejection was almost the same as declaring war on Gong Ting because she knew that President Gong Ting was not exactly a pushover. Chang Di was still unhappy about what had happened. He complained that Si Chen had only attracted attention because of a system error during the assessment, but Si Chen really thought he was a C rank. However, Gong Ting was not so quick to dismiss him. Gong Ting asked Chang Di what if the assessment was not wrong. He said that even if the chance was only 1 in 100 million, he would not allow anyone to take first place from him. Hearing that, Chang Di said that Si Chen was just a regular student with no real combat experience, while they had spent years secretly training in monster dungeons under Gong Ting's guidance. He asked Gong Ting why he did not teach Si Chen a lesson on his behalf. Gong Ting immediately shot him a cold look and asked whether he really thought he was such a petty person. Chang Di instantly panicked. Sweat ran down his face as he hurriedly apologized, explaining that he had not meant it that way. Gong Ting did not continue the topic. Instead, he said he was no longer in the mood to go to karaoke. He told his teammates to enjoy themselves without him. But as Gong Ting walked away, he told Chang Di that whatever he decided to do had nothing to do with him. Chang Di froze for a moment, surprised by the response. Then a sly smile slowly spread across his face. Chuckling to himself, he repeated Gong Ting's words. If it had nothing to do with Gong Ting, then no one could blame him for what he was about to do. About 10 minutes later, Chang Di asked one of Gong Cheng's subordinates if he was saying that Si Chen was still at school. The student nodded and explained that he had overheard Si Chen saying he was going home for a while. According to him, Si Chen had left campus without even staying for lunch. Hearing that, Chang Di's eyes lit up with excitement. He stomped an empty can beneath his foot and declared that even the heavens were on his side. A cruel smile appeared on Chang Di's face as he thought that once someone was off campus, there were no school rules to worry about. Out there, anything could happen. Meanwhile, Si Chen was completely unaware of the trouble brewing behind him. Wearing earphones, he calmly walked through the city streets, enjoying the peaceful afternoon. As he walked, his thoughts drifted to memories from his previous life. He remembered a major incident that had happened. One of the strongest guilds in the world had entered a monster dungeon in the Holy Land to conduct a raid. However, deep inside the dungeon, they encountered a terrifying monster unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. That monster was known as Wrath. The battle ended in disaster. The entire guild was wiped out, and not a single member survived. After destroying the guild, Wrath emerged from the dungeon and entered the human world. Its appearance marked the beginning of a catastrophe that claimed countless lives. At the moment, that was all the information Si Chen possessed about the creature. In his new life, Si Chen wanted to find the exact location of the monster dungeon, where Wrath would appear as soon as possible. After thinking carefully, he came up with a plan. However, to put that plan into action, he needed a large amount of money. With that goal in mind, Si Chen headed to the Mithril Guild's Mithril Monster Exchange. From his memories of the future, he knew that the Mithril Monster Exchange would eventually become the largest resource trading center in the country. Weapons and equipment played a huge role in determining an awakener's strength, and the exchange served as the main marketplace where such items were bought and sold. More importantly, Sai Chen knew it was the fastest place for him to make money right now. After entering the exchange, he took out several sharp monster claws and placed them on the counter. The employee behind the counter was immediately surprised. He picked up one of the claws and examined it carefully. Looking at Si Chen with disbelief, he asked how a student like him had managed to obtain such monster materials. Sai Chen calmly told the employee that the monster fangs had been dropped by a monster. The employee looked surprised. He said he had never heard of something like that before. At that moment, a pink-haired employee stepped forward. After examining the fangs, she recognized them immediately. She explained that they were Gravehound fangs, materials dropped by E-rank cloud monsters known as Gravehounds. She further explained that according to the records, the fangs could be forged into an E-rank cloud staff or ground into powder for other uses. The male employee quickly stopped her explanation. He said he already understood what the item was, and asked what value an E-rank material could possibly have. With a proud expression, he explained that the exchange operated under a VIP system and mainly served powerful and influential awakeners. He claimed that he only handled premium goods ranked D or higher, which was why he had failed to recognize a low-level E-rank item. Privately, the employee complained to himself. Business had been slow lately, and he worried that he would never be promoted to supervisor at this rate. Looking at Si Chen, he assumed he had only brought worthless materials. In his mind, Si Chen was just another troublesome kid, carrying junk. Thinking it was a waste of time, the employee decided it would be better to pass Si Chen over to one of the newer staff members instead of handling the transaction himself. Walking away, the senior employee decided to hand the transaction over to Miss Li. He told her to take care of the rest of Si Chen's order and encouraged her to do a good job. Miss Li politely accepted the task and promised to handle it well. After finishing the appraisal, Miss Li handed Si Chen a bag containing the payment. She politely told him that the money was his and reminded him to keep it safe. She then asked if there was anything else she could help him with. Si Chen checked the payment and saw that the 18 Gravehound fangs had earned him $18,000. He nodded to himself. That amount would be enough to cover his rent for the time being. However, Si Chen was not finished yet. He raised his hand, and a strange purple light appeared. A massive dark purple greatsword materialized out of thin air, covered in sharp spikes and glowing with an eerie energy. Holding the greatsword in front of him, Si Chen calmly asked Miss Li if she could appraise it as well. The moment she saw the weapon, Miss Li froze in shock. Her eyes widened as she stared at the enormous sword, thinking about how incredible and intimidating the greatsword looked. Miss Li said that although she had never seen a weapon like it before, she was certain it was at least B rank. The more she looked at it, the more convinced she became that it might even be an A-rank weapon. The senior employee immediately disagreed. He reminded her that A-rank weapons were extremely rare and sold for around $1 million. After working in the industry for many years, he had never even seen one in person. In his opinion, there was no way the weapon could be A-rank. At that moment, a well-dressed man with blue hair stepped forward. Examining the greatsword, he said that both of them were mistaken. The weapon was neither B-rank nor A-rank. The senior employee quickly agreed with his boss. He claimed he had known it all along, insisting that a poor student could not possibly possess something so valuable. But then the blue-haired man told them that it clearly came from the abyssal lands. Then he revealed the truth. The greatsword was an S-rank weapon. The words struck everyone like lightning. Miss Li froze in shock while the senior employee's face turned pale. His eyes widened so much they nearly popped out of their sockets. With a bright smile on his face, the blue-haired man stepped forward and warmly shook Si Chen's hand. He respectfully thanked him for choosing their exchange and said it was an honor to serve such an important customer. He then personally invited him to the VIP lounge. He assured him that anything he needed would be provided immediately and asked him not to hesitate to make any requests. Si Chen followed the blue-haired man through the exchange hall and while walking, smiled faintly. At last, the person he had been waiting for had appeared. That blue-haired man's name was Qingji, the leader of the Mithril Guild. After settling into the VIP lounge, Qingji carefully examined the massive S-rank greatsword resting on the table. He then politely asked Si Chen how much he intended to sell the weapon for. Without hesitation, Si Chen replied that he wanted 1 million. His answer immediately caught Qingji off guard. Surprised, he asked if Si Chen was really only asking for 1 million. Qingji then explained that even ordinary A-rank equipment could sell for millions. An S-rank weapon like this one would easily be worth tens of millions on the market. In fact, he said the weapon was so valuable that it could cause a frenzy among buyers. Si Chen shook his head and clarified that he did not want to sell the weapon. Instead, he wanted to use the S-rank greatsword as collateral for a loan of 1 million. He added that he would repay the loan within 1 month. Hearing this, Qingji was stunned. Using an S-rank weapon as collateral for such a small loan was something he had never encountered before. As he stared at Si Chen, he could not help wondering whether this was really the kind of idea an ordinary university student would come up with. He carefully observed Si Chen and realized that he had no intention of selling the S-rank sword at all. It seemed more likely that he planned to keep and use it in the future. The more Qingji thought about it, the more impressed he became. Si Chen was far wiser than someone his age should be, and possessing a treasure like an S-rank weapon only made him seem even more mysterious. Qingji wondered about his true identity. Was Si Chen the child of some wealthy family who had run away from home? Or was he a hidden prodigy concealing his real strength? Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain. Si Chen was far from ordinary. Si Chen then stated that he would repay the principal amount of the loan within 1 month. On top of that, he offered to pay 10% interest the following month, and asked whether those terms were acceptable. After hearing this, Qingji asked Miss Li to step outside so that he could speak privately with Si Chen. Once they were alone, Qingji sat quietly for a moment, before revealing what he had figured out. He pointed out that Si Chen attended National Awakener University, and that the senior students there were about to graduate. Qingji then explained that the university held a graduation examination every year. This year's examination would take place exactly 1 month later, and the first-place prize was precisely 1 million. With a faint smile, Qingji remarked that the timing matched perfectly with Si Chen's proposed loan amount and repayment schedule. Qingji studied Si Chen for a moment before revealing his conclusion. If he had to guess, Si Chen was completely confident that he would take first place in the upcoming graduation examination. Hearing that, Si Chen remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the statement. Qingji continued his analysis. He said that if Si Chen truly believed he would win first place, then he could have simply waited 1 month and collected the prize money himself. Yet instead, he had come to the Mithril Guild and offered an incredibly valuable S-rank weapon as collateral for a loan. From that, Qingji concluded that he urgently needed the money. No one would choose such a risky option unless they had no better alternative. After a brief pause, Qingji smiled. He said that if that was really the situation, then he was willing to make a better offer. Instead of 1 million, he would personally lend Si Chen 1.5 million in cash immediately. Even better, there would be no interest at all for the first month. Qingji extended his hand towards Si Chen with a friendly smile, and told him to consider it the beginning of a friendship between them. Si Chen was stunned and looked at him silently for a moment as he considered Qingji's offer. Qingji smiled and assured him that everything discussed in the room would remain completely confidential. He also asked Si Chen to remember the Mithril exchange in the future. If he ever needed to buy or sell anything, Qingji hoped he would choose their exchange first. In return, he promised to give him the best possible deals. Hearing this, Si Chen was impressed. With only a few clues, Qingji had accurately figured out both his situation and what he needed. More importantly, instead of taking advantage of his difficulties, Qingji had offered even better terms in hopes of building a long-term partnership. Now Si Chen understood why Qingji would eventually turn the Mithril exchange into the most successful exchange in the world. After thinking it over, he accepted the offer and shook Qingji's hand. Inwardly, he knew that defeating Wrath would require more than just his own strength. If he wanted to succeed, he would need trustworthy allies by his side. Building a good relationship with Qingji was an important first step. As their agreement was sealed, a glowing golden magic circle suddenly appeared beneath their hands, releasing a faint buzz of energy. The contract between them had officially been formed. As soon as the magical contract was completed, the system confirmed that the funds had been transferred. A notification appeared on Si Chen's phone, showing that 1.5 million had been deposited into his account. Seeing the money arrive successfully, he felt satisfied. Qingji then brought up another matter. Since Si Chen had used such a powerful weapon as collateral, he wondered what weapon he planned to use during the graduation examination. He even offered to lend him some equipment from the Mithril exchange. Qingji explained that they did not currently possess any S-rank equipment, but they still had plenty of powerful A-rank and B-rank weapons and gear available. However, Si Chen calmly declined the offer. Before anyone could react, sparkling particles of light gathered in his hand, and another massive purple weapon materialized before everyone's eyes. Holding the weapon, Si Chen casually revealed that he still had another one exactly like the weapon he had just used as collateral. Seeing that, the room instantly fell silent. Qing Ji, the old man, and Xiao Li stared at the newly summoned weapon in complete shock. Their eyes widened, and their expressions froze. None of them could believe what they were seeing. As Si Chen prepared to leave, Qing Ji watched him walk away, and could not help but sigh in admiration. In his eyes, talented young people like him were becoming increasingly rare. He politely wished Si Chen a safe journey, while Xiao Li also bowed respectfully and saw him off. Qing Ji then turned to Xiao Li with a smile. Since she had continued assisting such an important client from beginning to end, he immediately promoted her to the position of supervisor. Xiao Li was overjoyed by the unexpected promotion. She jumped with excitement while thanking Qing Ji repeatedly for the opportunity. Meanwhile, while leaving, Si Chen suddenly stopped, remembering something. He turned around and told Qing Ji that there was still something he needed to buy. After purchasing that item, he hailed a taxi and arrived at Changchang County, long-distance bus terminal. Standing in front of the large terminal building, he looked at the entrance thoughtfully. In his previous life, Si Chen's family went through a very difficult period financially. Even after graduating, he had not awakened any special abilities, so no guild was willing to recruit him. With no other choice, he spent his days taking whatever odd jobs he could find. He rushed from one delivery to another, working tirelessly just to earn enough money to pay the rent and keep his family afloat. Despite all his efforts, money was always scarce. After paying the monthly rent, he and his younger sister, Uni, were often left with almost nothing. They had to live extremely frugally just to get by. Whenever he worried about their situation, Uni would try to comfort him. She would cheerfully tell him that she had found a tutoring job and that everything would be fine, even though she was struggling as well. Chen then remembered another painful event from that time. Uni had received an acceptance letter from the prestigious International Central Art Institute, the school of her dreams. But in the end, she reluctantly gave up the opportunity. She told herself that the school was too far away and that she wanted to stay close to her older brother. His little sister had abandoned her dream school because she was worried about adding more financial pressure to the family. The sacrifice she made for him remained one of his deepest regrets from his previous life. Now, in the present, as he waited outside the bus terminal, Si Chen checked the time and began to worry. It was already getting late, and Uni should have arrived by now. Just then, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him. A girl hurried over while pulling a large suitcase behind her. She immediately started scolding him. She reminded him that if he was picking someone up, he should wait at the exit, not at the entrance. The girl was Si Yun, Si Chen's younger sister. The moment he saw her, Si Chen froze. His eyes widened in disbelief. It had been 7 years since he had last seen his little sister. Now, seeing her standing in front of him again, alive and well, felt almost unreal. Si Chen called out to him, asking her big brother to stop staring and help carry her luggage, but Si Chen did not respond. He just looked at her. Su Hong waved her hand in front of her brother's face and called out to him again. She asked why he was just standing there like a dummy and not saying anything. Without answering, Si Chen suddenly stepped forward and pulled her into a tight hug. Caught completely off guard, Si Yuan's eyes widened in shock. She froze for a moment, unable to understand what was happening. Si Chen closed his eyes and smiled faintly. Holding his little sister in his arms once again filled him with relief and happiness. 7 long years had passed since he had last been able to see her. Si Yun slowly returned to her senses while being squeezed in the embrace. She poked his arms, trying to free herself, and complained that he was hugging her so tightly that he was practically trying to choke her to death. Si Yun complained that her brother had been acting very strangely over the past few days. Teasing him, she asked if he had been rejected by a girl or something similar. Si Chen awkwardly denied it while carrying her bag. Before he could explain further, Si Jun excitedly urged him to hurry up so they could go home together. As they walked side by side, Si Yun cheerfully began talking about her trip and the entrance exam. She eagerly told him all about the strange and exciting things that had happened during her journey. Listening to her lively chatter, Si Chen quietly smiled. Looking at his little sister's happy face, he made a silent promise to himself. This time, no matter what happened, he would never allow her to suffer again. Meanwhile, in a narrow alley along the route Suchin usually took home, a group of thugs had already gathered. They knew this was the path he normally used, and were waiting for him. Their leader, Cheng Di, ordered everyone to hide and prepare an ambush. The moment Si Chen appeared, they planned to jump him together. With a cruel grin on his face, Cheng Di chuckled to himself. He was determined to teach Si Chen a painful lesson, and make him regret ever crossing him. One of the gang members nervously asked Chang Di that since several of them were student council members, what if things went too far? But Chang Di simply scoffed and said he only intended to teach Si Chen a small lesson. However, he admitted that Si Chen's attitude had greatly annoyed him. In his eyes, Si Chen was nothing more than a low-tier E rank who had suddenly started acting like a powerful C rank. He mocked him, saying that Si Chen had no idea who he was dealing with. Chang Di told the others that when the time came, they should leave Si Chen to him, because he personally wanted to destroy him. He swore that after he was finished, Si Chen would not even be able to take the graduation exam in 2 weeks. Chang Di proudly introduced himself as one of the best cloud-type assassins in the entire school. With a sinister grin, he pulled out a glowing dagger, promising to make Chen pay for acting so arrogantly. Meanwhile, unaware of the ambush waiting ahead, Chen and his sister continued walking home together. As they walked, Yuni looked at her older brother with concern. She told him that he had been acting strangely for the past few days, and asked if he was feeling stressed about the upcoming graduation exam. Then she teasingly added that someone as simple and carefree as him normally did not get so emotional over things. Yuni continued trying to encourage him. She reminded him that no matter what happened, he needed to stay strong and pull himself together. After all, he was always the one giving her that exact advice. She even repeated one of his favorite sayings: life was a long journey, and opportunities would come sooner or later. Trying to cheer him up further, Yuni started humming a motivational song about believing in oneself as they continued walking down the street. Chen watched her with a faint smile. He thought to himself that Yuni was incredibly perceptive. She had noticed something was different about him almost immediately. However, she still did not know that he had already awakened his powers, so she probably believed their family was still struggling financially. With a gentle smile, Chen assured her that he was completely fine. However, Yuni was not convinced at all. Looking at him suspiciously, she thought that he was still trying to hide his worries, and wondered if it was simply because of his pride as an older brother. Yuni came to a conclusion of her own. She remembered reading that men often built emotional walls as they grew older. Nodding to herself, she decided the book must have been right. Looking at Chen, she sighed, thinking he was getting old. Chen was left confused by her sudden behavior, and had no idea what she was thinking about. Meanwhile, hidden in a nearby alley, one of the masked students continued watching the siblings from a distance. He informed King Di that Chen was not alone and had a girl with him. Instead of being concerned, King Di became even happier. Laughing to himself, he declared that it was perfect. The alley had no security cameras, making it an ideal place to act. He excitedly told his companions that this was their lucky day. At that moment, Chen suddenly narrowed his eyes. A familiar scent drifted through the air and immediately caught his attention. He quickly realized who was hiding nearby. The smell belonged to the same group of student council members. He felt a hint of annoyance. He thought that they were incredibly bold to come after him again. However, instead of confronting them immediately, he calmly took an earbud out of its case. Yuni was still sipping her drink when Si Chen gently placed the earbud in her ear. Then he smiled and told her that he had recently become obsessed with a particular song and had been listening to it on repeat. He encouraged her to listen to it as well. Surprised, Yuni blinked and asked when her older brother had suddenly started listening to music. As the music began playing, she closed her eyes and listened carefully. She nodded to herself, thinking that a person's music preferences could reveal their mental state. Since Chen seemed different lately, she decided that listening to his favorite song might help her understand him better. Meanwhile, Chen quietly watched her reaction. With Yuni distracted by the music, he was finally free to deal with the troublemakers who had been following them from the shadows. Chen's eyes began to glow with a cold blue light as he turned his attention toward the people hiding in the alley. Chang Di's group rushed forward with weapons in their hands, confident because they greatly outnumbered him. Most of them were only E-rank awakeners, while only Chang Di was a low-tier D rank, while Yuni stood nearby, listening to the song Chen had given her. Chen and Chang Di's group charged at each other at full speed. Chen remembered that in the year 2060, he had lost his last remaining family member. It was not until 2167 that he was reborn and given a chance to return to the past. Because of that miracle, he was finally able to see his little sister again. Golden lightning began crackling around his body as his emotions surged. Looking at the thugs who dared approach while his sister was nearby, Chen's expression turned icy. He charged at them, roaring, "How dare they all come and ruin this moment." Like a bolt of lightning, he shot forward. Before the thugs could react, he appeared among them and delivered a devastating kick. One man was struck so hard that blood sprayed from his mouth as he was sent flying across the alley. The remaining thugs froze in shock, unable to believe the speed and power of the attack. Meanwhile, the song continued playing in Yuni's ears. Yuni remained unaware of the battle happening behind her. At the same time, Si Chen moved through the alley like a streak of lightning. Every strike was swift and overwhelming, leaving the attackers terrified. One thug barely had time to let out a frightened scream before Si Chen was already upon him. The gang members who had arrived full of confidence were now realizing that they had provoked someone far beyond their ability to handle. Chen moved like a flash of lightning through the crowd of attackers. Before they could react, his fists and kicks struck one thug after another. Bodies were sent flying in different directions as blood sprayed through the air. The gang members could not even see his movements clearly. To them it was as if a streak of lightning was tearing through the battlefield. The song continued playing in the background. One of the stronger thugs suddenly rushed at Chen and swung a heavy bandaged arm at him. However, Chen reached out and caught the arm in midair. Before the attacker could even react, Chen tightened his grip and twisted it with terrifying force. A loud cracking sound echoed through the alley as the thug's arm broke instantly. The man tried to scream in unbearable pain as tears filled his eyes. But before he could, Chen punched him in the face with overwhelming force. The impact created a loud boom, sending that thug and the others flying everywhere. Changdi stared in shock. His eyes widened as he watched the scene unfold. He could not believe what he had just seen. He cursed in disbelief and wondered what kind of monster Chen was. At that moment, yellow lightning crackled around Chen's body. Without giving his enemies any chance to recover, he charged forward once again. Moving at incredible speed, Chen punched one thug directly in the face, sending him flying backward. Before the others could react, he rushed in and struck another thug with a devastating blow. Chen's fist was covered in blood as he charged at Changdi, who was the only one standing. Holding a knife, Changdi trembled as he faced Chen's terrifying presence. Even so, he refused to give up. Gritting his teeth, he shouted that he was the strongest cloud-type assassin and insisted that Chen could not defeat him. Filled with anger and fear, he charged forward with a loud roar, swinging his knife with all his strength. However, before the attack could reach him, Chen appeared in front of Changdi like a bolt of lightning and struck him with a devastating punch. Blood sprayed through the air as the knife flew from Changdi's hand. The force of the blow sent him hurtling backward like a rag doll. Changdi crashed into the distance and rolled across the ground. Without slowing down, Chen caught up to Changdi and delivered another crushing blow. Chen's fist slammed into Changdi's face with terrifying force. The impact twisted Changdi's expression as blood sprayed through the air. Before he could recover, Chen struck again, sending him flying across the street like a cannonball. Changdi crashed into the ground with a thunderous explosion. The pavement shattered, and a huge cloud of dust rose into the air. He lay buried in the crater, completely overwhelmed by Chen's strength. Chen slowly walked toward the ruined pit. His eyes glowed with a cold red light as he stared down at the battered Changdi. Changdi was covered in blood and could barely move. Chen reminded him that he had already warned him never to bother him again. With his voice filled with menace, he asked Changdi what part of that warning he had failed to understand. Changdi lay on the ground in terrible pain. He realized that all of his ribs were broken, and both of his legs had gone numb. As blood poured from his mouth, he finally understood that Si Chen's rank assessment had been completely wrong. Si Chen was definitely not just a D rank awakened. Filled with fear, Changdi weakly apologized. Si Chen ignored the apology. He grabbed Changdi by the collar, snatched away his knife, and pressed the blade against his throat. In a cold voice, he ordered him to stay quiet, warning that if he made even the slightest sound, he would kill him. Changdi froze in terror. Looking into Si Chen's eyes, he realized there was no hesitation or bluff. Si Chen truly intended to kill him if he disobeyed. Changdi could not understand how someone who looked like an ordinary student could possess such overwhelming killing intent. He wondered what kind of life Si Chen had lived to become so terrifying. Staring at the trembling Changdi, Si Chen told him to remember every single word he was about to say. He declared that he did not care what happened to those trash-like criminals, but they were never to bother him again. Then his voice turned even colder as he warned them that if any of them ever tried to harm his sister, or even simply appeared in front of her again, he would hunt them down one by one. He said that without a second thought, he would make every one of them disappear forever. Then he stared directly at Changdi and asked if he understood. Terrified beyond words, Changdi quickly nodded. He did not dare speak or make another sound. Watching the trembling Changdi, Si Chen finally stepped back and dropped the knife onto the ground. Changdi remained frozen against the cracked wall, too frightened to move. At the same time, Si Chen's sister continued listening to music through her earphones, completely unaware of the brutal fight that had just taken place. Tears slowly rolled down her cheeks as the song filled her heart with sadness. She quietly wondered why it made her feel so lonely, and why it made her want to cry so badly. Yuni could not understand what was happening. It had only been a few days since she had last seen her brother, yet he was acting as if he had endured years of loneliness and suffering. Tears filled her eyes as she wondered how he could possibly feel so alone when she had always been by his side. Unable to hold back any longer, Yuni turned back and called out, asking if he had taken the joke too far. But as she turned, she saw Si Chen standing behind her, holding a small red gift box. With a smile on his face, he told Yuni that he had bought something especially for her. Yuni gasped in surprise when she saw what was inside. It was the newest model of a magical holographic pen from Dragkoso. She stared at it in disbelief before asking how he had managed to buy something so expensive. The pen cost more than 10,000, and she could not understand where he had gotten the money to pay for it. As Si Chen watched Yuni hold the expensive gift, memories from his previous life flooded his mind. Back then, he had failed to protect her. He had not only lost the person he cared about most, but he had also failed to protect her dream. Looking at her now, he silently made a promise. In this life, he would protect everything that belonged to Yuni, no matter what it cost. Meanwhile, the injured thugs lay scattered across the alley, groaning in pain, and desperately begging someone to call an ambulance. Back at their home, Yuni finally decided to try the magical holographic pen. The moment she drew in the air, glowing pink lines appeared before her eyes. Within seconds, a beautiful holographic fish floated in front of her. She stared at it in amazement, and happily exclaimed that it really worked. The pen could actually draw holographic images in the air. Seeing her bright smile, Si Chen smiled as well. He told her that as long as she liked it, that was enough. While saying that, Si Chen ate happily. He praised Yuni's fried egg noodles, saying they were the best he had ever eaten. Yuni then looked at the expensive holographic pen in her hands, and worriedly reminded Si Chen that they still had rent to pay. She could not understand why he had spent so much money on such an expensive gift. Smiling calmly, Si Chen told her not to worry, because he had already paid the rent for the entire year. Yuni froze in shock. She could hardly believe what she had just heard, and immediately asked how he had managed to do that. Si Chen awkwardly scratched his head and explained that he had started a small business with a friend, and they had earned some money. Yuni narrowed her eyes at him. She immediately realized he was lying. He had never been good at lying. His story sounded far too suspicious, and she complained that he was now keeping secrets from her. But watching Si Chen smile and tease her like this filled her heart with happiness. It had been such a long time since she had seen him acting so lively. Yuni gently looked at Si Chen and told him that no matter what happened, she only wanted him to take care of himself and not push himself too hard. Si Chen remained silent for a moment before smiling softly and nodding in agreement. Meanwhile, news spread to Gongting that Chen Di had suffered devastating injuries. More than 60% of the bones in his body had been fractured, and even the country's best doctors believed it would take far longer than a month for him to recover. Gongting could not believe Chen Di had actually challenged Si Chen. Sitting behind him, Ling Yu added that Chen Di had been beaten so badly that he would most likely miss the upcoming graduation exam because of his injuries. Gongting coldly said that it did not matter. In his opinion, his team would perform better without anyone who would only hold them back. Standing beside Gongting, Gong Xuan, the director of career services at the National Awakener University, asked if this incident once again involved Si Chen. He told Gongting that he had confirmed the internal results of the latest ranking assessment. Sior Chen was truly a C-rank awakener. He explained that Sior Chen was the only student in the entire school whose rank was higher than that of Gongting. Gongting fell silent after hearing those words. Gong Xuan then reminded Gongting that his father had invited the vice chairman of the alliance to personally watch his performance during the graduation examination. He warned him not to let anyone else steal the spotlight, and urged him to prove himself at the exam. Gong Xuan looked back at Ling Yu and said that if all the other candidates failed, he could only ask his niece to take the vacant spot in Gongting's team. But before Ling Yu could say anything, Gongting told Gong Xuan that he was thinking too much. He asked whether they really believed he had used his full strength during the ranking assessment. Gongting declared that, on the day of the combat examination, he would show everyone who was the strongest. On the other hand, at 11 p.m. in the National Awakener University men's dormitory, Sai Chen had completed his 100-kilometer run while carrying weights. While bathing, Suo Chen thought that now that his money problems had been solved, everything was going according to plan. He believed that after graduation, he could finally begin carrying out his real goals. His next objective was clear. He had to win first place in the graduation examination and claim the 1 million yuan prize. With that money, he planned to repay the loan he had borrowed from Qingji. He knew it was important to keep his promise because he would need Qingji's help many times in the future. As he lay on his bed that night, Si Chen thought about the graduation examination. There was less than a month left before it began. To make sure he achieved victory, he knew he still needed to level up a few more times before the competition started. With that thought, he closed his eyes. Just as Si Chen closed his eyes, his glutton system started initializing, and soon the initialization was complete. And the glutton system initiated. He once again fell into that strange world, where a massive tower stood in front of him. Sai Chen calmly walked up the long staircase toward it. While thinking about the results of his previous assessment, the last assessment had shown that his weakest class, Gravehound King, was only a mid-tier C rank. However, the system could not determine the rank of his strongest class, Abyssal Fiend. Although the class was at least S rank, Sai Chen knew he could not yet use its full power. Because of that, he had no idea how much stronger it could eventually become. He also realized that the exact ranks of his remaining two classes were still unknown, until he unlocked their full abilities. Even the system could not accurately measure their true potential. Si Chen summoned an item from the glutton system. A golden key appeared in front of him. It was the Time Rift Key, an SS rank item and the only key capable of opening the gates of the Tower of Darkness. Without hesitation, he inserted the key into the enormous gate and decided to test its power. The massive doors slowly opened with a deep rumble, revealing a swirling purple portal hidden inside the tower. As he looked at the mysterious portal, Si Chen wondered what kind of place awaited him inside the Tower of Darkness, and what dangers or opportunities he would find there. After taking a deep breath, he stepped into the portal. The moment he entered, he was pulled through the swirling energy. When he finally looked around, his eyes widened in surprise. He realized that the place he had arrived in was unlike anything he had ever seen before.